Very, very much, Mr. Chair. City Council and citizens of Tampa, for the invocation, I am pleased to present Bishop Michelle B. Patty, Senior Pastor of Trinity and Faith Ministry. She is also the host of What's Really Happening talk show on WTMP and is a lifelong resident of the community and also a public servant. Miss Michelle B. Patty.
Good morning to all. Let us pray. Our Father, maker of heaven and earth and all mankind, we come first to say thank you for your grace and your mercy. We ask that you heal our land and grant us peace and love. We pray for the leaders of this great country, the men and women on the battlefield, both domestic and foreign. We pray for our veterans. We pray for our mayor and this city council, asking that you give them wisdom, understanding, compassion to lead our people. We pray that you continue to let your anointing fall fresh on this city and continue to lead us forward. These are all our prayers. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop.
God bless you.
Thank you. If you're able to stand, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Vieira. Goods.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Dingfelder.
Here.
Petro.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here. And just to make note, Councilmember Vieira will not be able to join us today due to a family emergency, so he will not be taking part this morning or this evening. Mr. Shelby.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of City Council. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Today is October 22nd of 2020, and this 9 a.m. virtual workshop meeting of the City Council is being held in accordance with the declarations and provisions of the Governor's Executive Order 2069, as amended and extended by EO 20-246, and by the Emergency Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended by the City Council. It is being conducted by audio teleconferencing only with video presentations. Remote participation, which is referred to by the state of Florida statutes and rules as Communications Media Technology, or CMT. Now, the public and citizens of the city of Tampa are able to watch today, listen and view this meeting, the presentations, on cable TV, Spectrum, channel 640, Frontier channel 15, and on the internet at tampagov.net/live stream, one word, and on City Council's Facebook, the City of Tampa's Facebook page. Now, since this meeting is being conducted with the use of CMT, methods have been established for members of the public to offer public comment, and that would be through the internet or web, and voicemail, regular mail, and to speak remotely during public comment, and to provide in-person comments during the meeting. And for those individuals who don't have access to a laptop or a tablet or a desktop, the communications media technology is made available to them if they do travel to the Tampa Convention Center, where they are able to use the facilities there to communicate to City Council. Now, the public comments, pre-recorded and live, per Council's direction, will be heard at the start of the meeting. Written comments received by yesterday's deadline have been distributed to City Council and are made part of the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm looking, before we begin, a couple of things. We have a very long agenda. We have what I calculate around an hour and a half to 2 hours possibly of public comment. And we have a very long evening agenda. So I'd like to, unless there's any objection, that we take a break at 12 o'clock for 30 minutes so we can take a breather and have lunch, whatever we got to do, and then we'll continue. And remember, we also have a special call after this. Having said that, because we have a significant amount of public comment, Under ceremonial activities, item number 1 for Debbie Rotolo, if we could take that first before we go into public comment, and then we'll start the agenda from there. So whomever is present for Debbie Rotolo, I know the motion was made by Councilmember Miranda, if they'd like to go ahead and begin.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. That presentation for accommodation for Debbie Rotolo was done the day she retired at her offices on the 2nd of October.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
and do we have? Go ahead.
I believe that Debbie is on the line according to John Bennett. So why don't we give her a shout out?
Okay, no problem.
All right, Ms. Rotolo, are you on the line?
Good morning. Thank you, Council Chairman and council members. I appreciate the commendation that you presented to me through Councilman Miranda at my retirement reception. He did read the entire commendation per Mary's instructions, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've enjoyed working with each of you and your legislative aides. They do an awesome job, and I consider them my friends. I also want to thank Mayor Castor and Chief Bennett for their kind comments at my send-off. It meant so much to me. The reception was so beautiful, and I appreciate all Lori and Phyllis did to set it up. I've been involved with the city since I was born. My mom started at the police department in 1960, retiring in 1985, and because of her, my career began. Tomorrow, October 23rd, will be her 97th birthday, and I know she is watching this morning, so please allow me to wish her a happy 97 years young. Mom, you are a treasure to our family, and I love you very much. Through the years, I've worked with so many terrific senior executive aides and executive aides that make this job so much easier. All the employees, but especially my city sisters, as I like to call them. Marion, Sherry, Vi, Dolores, Nikki, Lori, Karen, Michelle, Ida, Laura. I could go on and on. We've raised our families together and shared many life events. I consider them family. The city has been so good to me and my family, including my husband, Steve, who retired from code enforcement 3 years ago. It's been an amazing ride from police to Parks and Rec to the executive offices. I have enjoyed every administration, all my bosses, and the opportunity to assist our citizens. I'm so thankful to have worked alongside with each of you, the amazing employees who serve our community with integrity. I wish Council, Mayor Castor, Chief Bennett, continued success. I will keep you in my prayers. I know I am leaving my city in your good hands. I am so grateful and blessed. Thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you very much. We certainly will miss you, and we thank you for your many years of dedicated service to the city and to the City of Tampa family. I had the opportunity to first meet you about 5 years ago when I was first elected, and you always do an amazing job. You always go above and beyond, and we will certainly miss you. Any other council members have anything they would like to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Dingfeld.
Thank you. So Debbie, they put up your smiling face on our TV camera, and it's so nice to see you. My wife Lynn's known you for 30 plus years, and I've known you for 25 plus years, and always with the same helpful attitude and smiling face. And I think you helped teach city staff that that's the way to be. That we're all public servants, and to be helpful and cheerful every single day, I think is the way that you got yourself. And I give a shout out to your mother, 97 years old. Happy birthday, Mom. You raised a great daughter. So we'll miss you tremendously, and best of luck.
Thank you very much. Any other council members?
Chair,
Councilman Booth.
thank you for your leadership this morning. And to Mr. Tolo, thank you for the leadership you've given for so many years to our executive aides, to this city, and the wonderful work you've done to mentor and train others. I know you're going to be very missed. But again, great blessings to you in your retirement. And again, happy birthday to your mother. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Debbie, I was there at your retirement shindig over at New City Hall. And surrounding you were many, many people that love you and have worked with you over the years. You may be leaving your office, but the things that you have helped this city accomplish over the years, your name will be remembered forever. Thank you, Miss Debbie, for all your years of work.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Miranda here.
Councilman Miranda, yes, sir.
I just want to say she came to work as a teenager and she's leaving as a teenager. I guess you can attribute that to the way she handles stress and works with her fellow employees to get things done. We've worked together for a long time, and she's a shining star. And God bless America for giving us the opportunity for her to be born here in America, be here in the city of Tampa, and to have helped so many people come in and do their jobs in the city. She always worked her way up. She never started at the top, but no matter where she was at, whether it was at the police station or other jobs that she had, through her ethics of work and commitment to get things done right the first time, she succeeded very highly. I just want to say thank you very much, and we'll miss you dearly.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Carlson.
Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to thank you. You know, a year and a half ago, I was a newbie and didn't know my way around the inside of City Hall. And I appreciate all your guidance, patience, wisdom, helpfulness, kindness, professionalism, etc. Throughout your time there, and look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you for everything you've done for our city.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. We wish you all the best on your future endeavors and in your retirement. And again, thank you for all that you've done for so many years. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, Council. My heart is full. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Okay. We will now begin with public comment. I have quite a few speakers that have registered to speak live. Madam Clerk, if they are on and you would like to begin, we can start the clock.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Councilman Dingfelder.
Since we have a lot of staff on the line waiting,
Okay.
it might be more efficient for us to get the workshop out of the way and ask the public to call back in or to participate with us afterwards. I know it's a little unusual.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm sorry, Martin Shelby here. Council, that was at the specific direction of the City Council. I believe that was by motion and vote, and that was the way the meeting was noticed. And there are people who have relied on that on their schedule to be able to participate. So I just ask the council take that into account. And also, Mr. Chairman, please do remember the Tampa Convention Center. I don't know whether there's anybody waiting to speak at the Tampa Convention Center as well.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you know if we have anybody at the Convention Center at this time?
At this time, I do not know of anyone being at the Tampa Convention Center.
Okay, but you know, I appreciate your comments and suggesting, Councilman Dingfelder, but the people, you know, I'm not going to put the people after because we don't know how long the presentations are going to be. You know, and
I didn't realize I noticed that. That's fine.
Okay, all right. Begin with public comment. I have the stopwatch ready here. Time 3 minutes per person. So would just state their name as they come on the line.
All right, the first person we have is Stephanie Pointer. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself.
I don't know why we had Wi-Fi. Now we don't have Wi-Fi. Can you hear me?
Yes, Stephanie Pointer, go ahead. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning.
Yes.
I didn't know I was first.
Yes, you.
Good morning. I got a real tickle out of
number 5 on the agenda. It says protect the people, the areas that don't want growth. Honestly, it's not about what we want. It's about what is safe. And sometimes I feel like a broken record. 16 years of teaching, and I don't think I repeated myself as many times as I have in front of the city council. We in SOG, south of Gandy, want to know what's coming before we get to the movie. We don't want to keep showing up 15 minutes late. We want a plan. We're excited to see this today. There are 4 main things that I want to ask for today. We want a consideration for traffic, not just because of the population that lives here, but because we are butt up to an economic engine. In 2015, McDill had 15,000 employees. The last numbers I've received from the base puts them at over 22,000 employees. It's my understanding retirees number another nearly 40,000 employees. Those people, visitors to our base. So if you look at that group alone, that almost doubles the numbers of the people who live in our area that are driving just through our area. Our traffic has increased so much since 2017 when they put in new medians in Dale Mabry that the Florida DOT is offering to rip out. They already have a plan to rip out those medians and replace them with ones that they consider to be more safe. The third thing we need to consider when considering traffic down here is the industrial traffic that comes through our area. We have hundreds of tanker trucks who come through here every day. Chevron and Modiva both told me between the 2 of them about 150 trucks a day. Every time I go down and count trucks at the corner of Inner Bay and West Shore, I'm counting it should be about 300 a day. The second thing we want is for good neighbor notices. I asked you guys last year to vacate a 625 square foot piece of property from the city behind one of my properties. I notified the same distance as developers who are developing 400, 500, 600 apartments, townhouses, whatnot. That just doesn't seem right. Number 3, the coastal high hazard area. I'd like to see those nice, neat, SMART goals that everybody talks about: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. 80% of the building, and I sent with Mr. Shelby last week the map that I have made of what I could find in South Tampa that has been built in the last since 2016. All of my documentation is from 2016. I noticed today that the PowerPoint from the planning department says 2010. So I'm really, that was, whew. Number 4, rattlesnake. The land use objective 8.11, transition the use of a transition rattlesnake to a mix of residential and commercial retail. We've got a whole bunch of residential and almost no commercial retail. Only 1 out of 8 of the projects that have been built there in the last 2 or 3 years actually has anything but residential use.
Thank you so much. All right, next speaker.
Next speaker is Michael Randolph.
Mr. Randolph?
Yes, hello?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the West Tampa CDC. I'm a board member in the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development. I've been working in West Tampa in and out for over 15 years, and I've never felt the fears of residents, low income and working poor, related to them feeling that they're going to be forced out of the community. Let me give an example. Miss Johnson, she had 4 kids and lived in West Tampa for over 15 years. She is well-liked in the community and works 45 to 60 hours a week, and she barely makes rent. She fears what's going to happen. Will she be priced out? Mr. Pearson, well, he's a senior citizen living on fixed income. He's been in the community for over 50 years. Everybody loves him. At night, he thinks about, will I be able to live in this community? Our solution? The West Tampa CDC approach to reducing the impact of gentrification is based upon a social economic strategy that creates jobs and builds both community and individual wealth. Our most recent project, the West Tampa CDC Technological Center, Wealth Building and Job Creation Center, over the next 5 years, will create anywhere between 50 to 60 new resident-owned businesses, and with a result of 60 to 70 jobs for the residences in West Tampa. This project is self-sustainable by generating revenues from corporate America, who are really strong about and concerned about institutional racism and gentrification. We address both of those questions. This project will have 9 diverse revenue strategies to increase our financial independence. One will be a training center and code and teaching people how to code, software development, web application, video application, and mobile application. I can't go over all of the programs, but at the end of the day, this is how we deal with gentrification. This is how we deal with people that's sleeping right now in West Tampa, that's wondering, will I be here tomorrow? It's easy when you got a job and you can go home and you got economic security. It's not when you're poor and you live in a poor community that's being redeveloped. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak for the voices.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, next speaker.
Next speaker is Nancy Takamori.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Takamori, and my family and I reside in the towers of Channelside in the downtown Channel District. I'm here today to address the noise ordinance item on your workshop agenda. We live on the 23rd floor of this building. Below us, on the first floor, there's a nightclub called Park and Rec. With the exception of the 2 weeks or so in the run-up to this meeting and a brief pandemic-related closure, my family has been subjected to the sounds and vibrations of music for Park and Rec 4 to 5 nights a week until about 2:30 in the morning. As we live over 20 stories above the nightclub, the music must be very loud indeed to reach us, and I can only imagine how much worse it is for our neighbors who live in closer proximity. We chose to live here, understanding that there would be trade-offs. We'd live in a vibrant, walkable area with restaurants, bars, and entertainment, but that there'd be traffic, lights, and yes, noise. But those differing uses have to be regulated in a way that makes them compatible. Noise that's so loud that it can be heard 23 floors up until the early hours of the morning is simply not compatible with residential living. And make no mistake, however it was originally conceived, this section of the Channel District, north of Sparkman Wharf, is primarily a residential neighborhood. Now, I'm not seeking to put Park and Rec out of business. I don't want anybody to lose their job over this. I don't think that's necessary. I also don't think that we can count on the business to be a good neighbor. We've been asking them voluntarily for a long time to turn down the noise, and they just haven't done so. So what I'm asking is that you modify your noise ordinance to lower the decibel level thresholds for the Channel District, or at least this part of the Channel District. Please help us create a neighborhood where both businesses and residents can peaceably coexist. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Paris Garginis. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Paris Garginis, and I also live at the Towers of Channelside. My neighbor said it far more eloquently than I can, but the issue that I have is also the same as the previous caller has. We moved here, my spouse and I, 4.5 years ago, because this is a wonderful neighborhood to live. And it usually is until the nightclub on the ground level of our building starts playing the very loud music, which reverberates throughout the neighborhood, particularly more so now with all the new buildings that have gone up, and which makes the neighborhood more wonderful, but also increases the vibrations and the noise as the bounce back and forth from building to building. The only way that we can get any kind of peace and sleep is with earplugs, and those only work up to a certain point, because when the music and the loud noises move to the patio, those become ineffective, and they're not at all effective against the vibrations from the bass, from the music. And of course, our balcony, which is one of the reasons why we moved to this building, is almost useless to us because when the music is so loud, we cannot hear each other talk. So I would also please ask you to fix this problem to make our home livable and pleasant to live in. This is a great neighborhood, and I think it's wonderful the way the city is trying to make the street safe to walk, but a good night's sleep is also important for a healthy lifestyle. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
All right, next speaker we have is Robert Abberger.
Yes, good morning.
Morning. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I represent Davis Island Civic Association, and we have submitted comments and recommendations via a letter to you with regard to growth concerns on Davis Island. And I just want to encourage City Council to take positive steps. We appreciate staff greatly. We know how hard they work and the challenges that they face and the budget constraints that you all are facing in these times. So we truly do appreciate their comments and understand when they say we do not have the resources to address. What we've tried to do, however, is lay out initial steps that we believe can be taken within the resources that do exist. And we just encourage you to leave today with positive action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Kathy Echevillia.
Good morning. I'm from Oakford Park. That's just off of Kennedy and McDill, Cypress, and Del Mabry. And we have a unique zoning classification here that was put in probably when this area was cow pastures, but it is residential only. And there is a move afoot to request zoning to have multifamily units on North A Street, a very narrow street. And we think that is very unfair to our neighborhood, to people who already have invested here. When we look to our east and our west, we see multifamily neighborhoods that has just like taken over, and it really has impressed upon us that we do not want that to happen here. So we're against allowing multifamily zoning change to our the way our zoning is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Kenton Bradford. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself. Mr. Kenton
Bradford.
All right, we'll move on to Mr. Sean Brown. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself.
Yes, I can. Good morning, Councilman and Mr. Shelby. Thank you very much. My name is Sean Brown, and I am the Vice President of the Gandy Civic Association. The comments I'm going to make today in regards to items number 5 and 10 on the agenda. The Tampa Comprehensive Plan is a well-intended roadmap for future growth of our city that in recent years has shown flaws that need to be addressed. The main changes that need to be made is incorporating stronger language that holds developers and the city accountable to our neighborhoods as it pertains to the quality of life and assets located within the various neighborhoods. For example, Land Use Policy 1.1.4 places emphasis on recognizing Tampa International for its importance to the West Shore District. Yet this same emphasis is not placed on McDill Air Force Base concerning its importance and impact to South Tampa, in particular SOG. Now, Land Use Objective 8.3 focuses on development collaboration with the base, but only as it pertains to the potential impact on flight paths 1 and 2. The aspects lacking from these policies is the fact that 22,000 people travel to and from the base for work, which has implications on the entirety of South Tampa and in SOG in particular. As a result, the roads in South Tampa and Sauk have become unbearable and unsafe to get to and from work, in large part due to the uncontrolled influx of new residential units of nearly 4,500 within the last decade added to our area. And of course, that means those folks and regular residents and people traveling to the base are fighting for the same road space. Since there are a lack of transit options based on the fact that only 2 bus routes exist south of Euclid, it is difficult for any of the 22,000 folks traveling to the base for work to reliably consider transit as an alternative to get to and from the base. Finally, mixed-use developments that could accommodate much-needed commercial options would be nice to complement the impact the base has in South Tampa and in Sauk in particular, in the hopes of providing quality job opportunities to neighboring residents. Based on this, it's time to recognize the benefits the base has to offer before it is lost. Beyond MacDill Air Force Base, issues with mixed-use transit-oriented developments have placed a strain on the quality and economical lives of every resident. Currently, land use policies 1.1.6 and 1.1.7 focus on encouraging or considering, emphasis added, transit-oriented, pedestrian-friendly mixed-use development in all districts. While well-intended, this does not require, emphasis added, developers to design their projects in accordance with this. Contradictory, though, is land use policy 1.1.8, which states that development should provide diverse housing opportunities that are efficiently served by transit while maintaining the character of established residential neighborhoods. When looking at these policies, there needs to be strong, concise language that requires, emphasis added, mixed-use development to be transit-oriented and work with the surrounding neighborhoods to become an asset, not a liability. With that said, the involvement of neighborhoods in the design process of mixed-use development is critical to ensuring the needs are met for maintaining the economic, social, and historical value of the neighborhoods. Currently, Land Use Objective 9.3 attempts to address this, but unfortunately, there are no policies stating that developers are to consult with neighborhood associations to collaborate on the needs of the neighborhood and how best to design the proposed project to fit the surrounding area. This is a missed opportunity that should be remedied. Finally, please establish a residential density limit. Was that it? Was my time up or?
Yeah, so you're at 3 minutes, 34 seconds.
Oh, okay. Can I have 30 more seconds or no?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. My final comment is, finally, please establish a residential density limit that is measured by dwelling units per acre as recommended by the analysis of best practices for coastal high hazard areas. In addition, please put a suspension on rezonings for multifamily in the coastal high hazard area as staff recommended on page 62 of the presentation you will be seeing shortly. And please go one step further by including the CPA. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated for all the work that is done on behalf of the city.
Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Debbie Zummerman. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Davis Islands, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to provide comments. I'm looking forward to the various workshop presentations, and I greatly appreciate the commitment of staff as they have listened to the concerns of the residents. I respectfully request that there be an extended process for commenting after the presentations prior to any decision, as many of the items that will be discussed today have significant implications within our community. Again, thank you for the opportunity for these comments.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Carol Ann Bennett. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Before you start my time, I just want to say I signed up for multiple items. I thought we'd get to comment after each presentation. But if you give me 1 extra minute, I'll actually use less time and get it all done.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am. We start the clock now. You'll have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Carol Ann Bennett. I'm a lifelong resident of South Tampa. City resources are used to produce reports and PowerPoint slides, and frankly, it seems like a waste of time. The City Council holds hearings and renders judgment, but it seems to be stripped of authority. The comprehensive plan is broken and Tampa is rudderless. No matter what the city says about where and what kind of growth should occur, developers are the ones steering our ship. They decide what will make the biggest profit, and they threaten to sue the city if they do not get what they want. Suing the city has become part of the permitting process for them. It is just one cost of doing business. Strengthening the comp plan does not take away a builder's ability to develop within the current zoning. It does not take away the rights of city council to approve rezonings they think are in the best interest of the city. Strengthening the comp plan would give city council the rightful authority to say no to rezonings that you conclude are wrong for the city. An example of how the comp plan is broken is that it provides little protection for the future. Sea level is rising and storms are getting stronger. But when it comes to managing growth in the coastal planning area and the coastal high hazard area, we are whistling along with our blinders firmly in place and our fingers crossed, hoping that all the storms will pass us by and that the science is wrong. It kind of reminds me of the Titanic and how when they declared it unsinkable, people said they were flying in the face of God. You know the comp plan is broken because staff must label rezonings as consistent even though they violate the plan's objectives. Apparently, objectives are meaningless and it's the policies that count. But our plan does not have strong, meaningful policies. Please give us these policies. Give us a policy like what is recommended on page 13 of the analysis of best practice policies for development in the CHHA. It recommends establishing a residential density limit measured by dwelling units per gross acre. When builders wanted the city's tree code rewritten, they said the biggest problem was uncertainty. They could not look at a property and know what could be done with it. Uncertainty is an enormous sucking drain on everyone's resources, including mine. It sucks us all dry. Please create certainty and predictability. Give planning authority back to the residents and to the city. Amend the comp plan and establish a residential density limit measured by dwelling units per gross acre. And in the meantime, put a suspension on rezonings for multifamily in the CHHA as staff recommends on page 62 of their presentation that you're going to see. And please go one step farther and include the coastal planning area that is all evacuation zones. Do the annual reviews required by section 1.2.3 and section 11.5 of the comp plan. Read the 104 public comments Randy Goers got on development and policies and evacuation zones. You need to do this because according to that CHH analysis, we have been out of compliance with the state requirements for evacuation times since 2017, and they're expected to get even worse. Mr. Vieira said, don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, now is the time to change the game. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Yes, next speaker is Karen Cox.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am addressing agenda item number 11, and in particular with respect to a 257 residential condominium unit building named as the Towers of Channelside, which was developed in 2007 on Meridian. And it is one of the pioneers in the Channel District and has been there as the Channel District has been transformed into the live-work area that it is and continues to develop to be. Since Towers was put there, Riverwalk has grown. The USF Medical School has been built directly across the street on Meridian. Sparkman's Wharf has been installed. Growth requires changes to zoning and municipal codes. A residential, as other people have already addressed, a nightclub gaming bar named Parks and Rec is embedded in the Channel District below the residences in the Towers of Channelside. And although we are an advocate for progress, the reality is that this area, Channel District, is increasingly developing as a residential area. The city of Tampa is going to develop Channelside Drive as a residential roadway. And so nightclubs are incompatible. So we would ask that you consider changes to the municipal ordinances that more effectively control indoor and outdoor noise, that you make the Channel District governed by the noise standards of 14-153 as opposed to 14-154, that you consider ordinances that address the problem of human noise, because outdoor businesses or businesses that conduct themselves outdoors, such as Park and Rec, also create a great deal of human noise that currently is unregulated by the city's ordinances. That you consider changes to the hours of operations, especially of outdoor venues in residential neighborhoods such as the Channel District, and more effective enforcement of the noise ordinances. And we look forward to working with the City Council and the City Attorney's Office, and are grateful for the opportunity to provide our input on these important issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Mr. George Grass.
Yes, I'd like to thank the City Council for holding this workshop today and the opportunity to speak in regard to Agenda Item 11 regarding noise ordinances. My name is Daniel Grass, and my wife and I have lived in the downtown Tampa area since 2015. We chose to live the condo life due to walkability and access to various restaurants and attractions that downtown has to offer. We moved to the Towers of Channel Side in April of 2019 as I wanted to be closer to the Water Street development. We purchased a 24 condo in the Towers prior to the opening of the bar nightclub called Park and Rec, which I believe began operation in October of 2019. We were excited to see Park and Rec open, as it was an additional attraction with Sparkman Wharf and Channel Side that promoted our live, work, play locale. Since their opening, our opinions have changed. The first week of Park and Rec opening brought loud music, but we gave them the benefit of the doubt as it was a new opening. Since we were 20 floors up and not directly above Park and Rec, we thought we would be spared from their operations, but that is not true. At that time, my wife and I worked away from home, starting in the morning and returning in the evening, but we soon came to realize that Park and Rec would operate up to 2:30 in the morning on a nightly basis. The first weekend, their bass was so loud it started to shake my bedroom walls 20 floors up, which is completely different than hearing a car drive by with a loud stereo, as the bass from Park and Rec is persistent thumping as songs continue to play into the early morning. There is no escape, no dampening with sound machines, or turning up the TV to drown out the reverberations. After about 1 month, our sleep started to become deprived, especially after working long-hour days where I also have to make complex medical decisions on a daily basis, and then returning home to unrelenting bass throughout the night. I eventually walked into Park and Rec and asked them to please turn down their subwoofer, but this was shrugged off. Eventually, complaints were raised to our HOA, and we were told to call the non-emergent Tampa Police Hotline to file complaints. We quickly learned from the police that they were not able to enforce any citations due to ordinances and were limited to politely asking Park and Rec to turn down their music. As you can expect, frequently after a police visit, the music was turned up again. As a non-emergent complaint is triaged, you can imagine police may not show up until 45 minutes to 2 hours later. I have gone through my phone records, and since starting in the end of 2019, I have called the non-emergent hotline 30 times, mostly starting around 9 p.m. and going as late as 2 a.m., sometimes multiple times in a single night. You are also asked if you want to meet with an officer, but when it is 1 a.m., you don't want to stay up to deprive your sleep further. I am now call fatigued, and I am contemplating selling my condo. The emergence of COVID caused closure of Park and Rec, and the sound has decreased, but due to the reopenings, the intensity is now increasing again. Just last week, I was woken up at 2:15 in the morning of someone yelling expletives in a microphone about having a good night while also hearing the bass continue. We pay high taxes to live in 33602 and support the local downtown businesses on a weekly basis. Not being able to enforce any noise ordinance via the police is disheartening as a citizen of this community. I want Channelside businesses to thrive, but I please urge the city to modify the noise ordinance and decibel levels so the people of the Channelside district can come home to an area where they can rest after working their long jobs throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Mr. Phil Compton.
Good morning.
This is Phil
Morning.
Compton, 1430 East Park Circle, Tampa, and with Sierra Club Florida, we're a member of the Tampa Bay Climate Alliance. I just want to thank Councilmember Citro and his office, Council Attorney Martin Shelby, and our Sustainability and Resilience Officer, Whit Reamer. We've worked with these gentlemen in the last week to successfully resolve the issues raised by the 17 citizens who spoke last week on the matter of a clean energy future for municipal operations and the community as a whole. You know, it really is entirely appropriate that council create policy for the plan to move this city forward to a just and equitable transition to the 100% clean energy future for all that our community must have, so that all of us live in a sustainable and resilient Tampa. The members of the Tampa Bay Climate Alliance look forward to discussing the resolution as now drafted with you all in the next 2 weeks to get your input on the direction that our city will take in the decade ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Mr. Joseph Robinson.
All right, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, City Council, I appreciate the opportunity. Very rarely do I come to City Council. If I'm coming to City Council, that's because I'm coming out of retirement here, because there's some issues. And the issue is Chapter 26.5, the Equal Business Opportunity Program. I know you guys are going to have workshops in the future, but I recently had a bad experience. However, John Bennett, Ms. Osha Wynn, and Mr. Gregory Hart from the Equal Business Opportunity Program has assured me that they will get it straightened out and that they will do what they need to do to enforce and follow Chapter 26.5 of the city ordinances. And one of my concerns is this Equal Business Opportunity Advice Committee, where you're supposed to have 9 appointments from the mayor, 7 from city council. There's supposed to be the committee that, quote, out of the statute 26.5-208 Equal Business Opportunity Advice Committee to relay concerns of minority contractors, women contractors, non-minority contractors, and citizens at large to the city about the operation of this program. I think that has been lacking. I mean, I don't really have been involved with it, but it's starting to affect development. We have the wrong site in West Tampa that's getting developed. You're hearing a lot of questions about development. And what I want to make sure is that minority businesses have an opportunity on development in Tampa, and that the department, Equal Business Opportunity Program Department, does what it needs to do. They may need to be looked at because they may be too small. They may need people. They may need revenue. They may need something because, you know, they are not necessarily being available like they should be. So I would say that with the growth we're having with the PICE projects, with the projects we have occurring, the projects that you're developing at the city, that the mayor's doing a great job with workforce development, we need to take a serious look at it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that's a live registered speaker, Madam Clerk?
I will go back to Mr. Kenton Bradford to see if he's back on. Mr. Kenton Bradford, if you would like to speak, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, my name is Kenton Bradford. Good morning, City Council.
Good morning.
Let me start with 3 points. Number one, the good. I love living here in Tampa. We've moved here in August of 2016. I like being in the middle of the development of Water Street. I like that Sparkman Wharf has come around. I like that they're turning this part of Channelside and downtown into a very walkable, livable area. That's the good point. The bad point is when I moved here in 2016, I was faced with noise since I'm on the 9th floor of the building, and I face Meridian from, at the time, Asia and Ferg's, which is across from Emily Arena. And as Asia shut down, we now have Park and Rec. If you listen to the residents that were up on the 23rd and 20th floor, the mere fact that they can hear the noise and feel the vibrations pale in comparison to what I feel down here on the 9th floor, to the extent that we've had to go to a white noise machine in order to get any kind of sleep and try to drown out the noise. Had I known now what I knew when I moved here, And I've been a condo dweller most of my life, so I like living close to everything I can walk to. But had I known then what I know now, I would have not bought in here. I would have found someplace else to live. Just to bring up one more point, it's not just the base, it's also the people that are out there on the patio, or as we would say in Hawaii, the lanai. The noise from their screaming, and I heard somebody mention earlier about the obscenities. Yeah, in addition to that, the folks that are vomiting over the balcony onto the sidewalk, the trash that they leave out there. Park and Rec apparently does nothing to try to control that. They think that the only thing they have to worry about is inside that balcony area and inside the building. And last but not least, Meridian, most of the drivers that come out here treat that like a drag strip. And some of them, even at night, will circle around with their speakers going loud and enticing the people that are there at Park and Rec to applaud them. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. I don't need to pile on to everybody else that has already stipulated certain things, but just to let you know, something needs to be done about that noise ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else?
Sir, that was the last speaker that we have logged on. I do want to mention that we have 3 others that registered but was not able to appear, which is Sandra Sanchez, Robert Solomon, and Chuck Cave. And we could move forward with the public comment recordings if you would like.
Wait, before that, do we have anybody at the convention center just in case before we do that?
No, we do not have anyone at the Tampa Convention Center.
And we have 22 recorded public comments?
Actually 21.
21, all right, if you'd like to begin, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Brooke Eric, calling from Food and Water Action and Food and Water Watch, and on behalf of our nearly 5,000 resident members of Tampa, we want to thank City Council for hearing the report back from Whit Reamer last week and making sure that the comments from the public were heard and expressed, and that we look forward to working with both the mayor's office and the city council as we move forward toward a 100% by 2030 resolution and eventually incorporate all of that into a climate action and equity plan to bring Tampa into the future. I'll keep it brief, so thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
My name is Amelia Speth. I live in the Towers in Channelside. And I just want to comment on the noise level that Park and Recs generates and any future noise disruption that might occur well into 3, 4 in the morning. And it's completely unacceptable for a residential neighborhood. I would like the city of Tampa to create some limits on noise pollution and noise limits and enforce them. It does not belong in a residential neighborhood. And my boyfriend was brutally attacked in front of Park and Rec, and they pounded his head into the pavement multiple times while he was unconscious, and he has blood all over his face. He had to be lifted to the hospital. So, we regularly see fights and ambulances out there. So please bring a stop to this and set some guidelines and some rules and put in systems to enforce them. My number is 561-629-4372. I'm in, my address is 449 South 12th Street, Unit 1403. And thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Hi, council members. This is Dr. Desai. I'm at 449 South 12th Street, Tampa, Florida 33602, Towers of Channelside in Downtown District. This is mainly a comment regarding extraordinary amount of noise that we face from Park and Rec, which is on the first floor of our building. There's nuisance, there's loud car music, there is absolute chaos at night due to the club and the partying going on. It is sometimes safe for our kids to even go out during the evening, as well as to walk our dogs or be in the community because of the current situation with Park and Rec, especially the guests as well as the noise and nuisance and the open beverages that are being spilled all over the patio and around our community. It has deteriorated our community. We absolutely are frustrated and would like the city to take appropriate actions. I'm a physician who works many times at night, and I see when I come home late night from the hospital that there's absolute crazy amount of crowds, loud noise, loud cars, the cars parked in the middle of the street, Uber, Lyft, and it is even difficult to get into my home because they're blocking the roadway, and if we try to say something, they become confrontational. I hope you all can take some action to make our homes better and our lives better. Thank you.
This message is in regard to the Growth Management and Coastal High Hazard Area Workshop. My name is Michael Fanning. I live in Tampa. I've lived in South Tampa for 22 years. The south of Gandy area is experiencing out of control growth. Large apartment complexes are being approved in areas previously zoned commercial. Even though developers buy these properties, knowing the zoning does not include residential multi-unit building, they buy confident that they can acquire rezoning approval. This has been happening with the approval of City Council. Recently, community opposition has caused City Council to deny 3 project requests in a row. All 3 developers filed lawsuits against the city, and in all 3 cases, the City Council folded with only lip service to their original position, but no real opposition. Tampa is now a city with no zoning. Tampa's comprehensive plan is no plan at all. It is ignored and violated and might as well be scrapped, for it serves no purpose. City residents have no idea what is allowed and what is prohibited in regard to zoning and variances. Lot splitting in South Tampa is rampant, and neighborhoods are being ruined. City Council, when facing lawsuits, act as directed by city attorneys and capitulate. We need a real review of growth management. We need to scrap the comprehensive plan and institute an independent city council with the ability to make decisions based on real zoning laws, based on future needs considering climate change, evacuation needs, and population growth. Simply letting builders build may be good financially for a few people in the short term, but it's not a plan for all of us.
This is Adrian Swain. I live at 1209 East Cumberland Avenue, Unit 606. This comment is in reference to the issue of the towers at Channelside and Park and Rec and the noises. We are actually lucky enough to be on the backside of Tower 2 facing the aquarium, so we do not have the same noise or vibration issues that unfortunately a lot of our fellow residents in Tower 1 and some even in Tower 2 have to deal with. But we have had to deal with on multiple occasions people literally standing in the middle of the street waiting in line to get into the club. And of course, this is usually late at night on the weekend. The patrons of the nightclub don't really seem to care that they're blocking the street, and eventually someone's going to get injured there. It's a major health and wellness hazard because this type of commercial location is not really set up for, and nor is it probably even meant to accommodate hundreds of people waiting in line to get entry to a club. Also, recently we had a very good friend who had been looking at a particular unit for sale in Tower 1, and he had been monitoring the sales price of the unit, and when it dropped significantly, he asked both my wife and myself if we knew why it would have dropped that much and why they were having trouble selling it. And being that he was a friend, we were honest with him and told him that it's probably due to the fact that this unit is directly above Park and Rec, and therefore no one really wants to live in it. So when people decide that they want to sell their units because they can't sleep 2 or 3 nights out of the week, they're going to have trouble doing so because the word has gotten out that you don't want to live in Tower 1 above this nightclub. So even putting aside the fact that, people that live in Tower 1 and some people who live in Tower 2 can't sleep most weekend nights, which by itself is a horrible thing to try to put aside, the fact that we even have a nightclub in what should be a primarily residential area is going to cause valuation issues for everyone who lives here and subsequently the whole neighborhood as a whole. Now, we want to be clear that, we do not have a problem with commercial businesses occupying space in the Channelside and the Water Street district. Quite the opposite, actually. We feel that appropriate types of businesses will actually complement the lifestyle that residents of this district and the city are looking to foster in this neighborhood. So in our opinion, a business that operates as a nightclub several nights a week is just not the appropriate type of business to have in this area. Of course, Park and Rec will try to say that they're not a nightclub, but I'm confident that everyone involved in the situation, including Park and Rec, knows that not to be true. If you don't think so, just feel free to stop by any Friday or Saturday evening around midnight and see for yourself. And if you do stop by, imagine if you pay good money for a condo that's directly above all that noise. Thank you. I appreciate the council's time.
Hello, my name is Shelley Woods. I live at 449 South 12th Street in Unit 1004, the Towers of Channelside. My unit on the 10th floor is directly over Park and Rec. It has been a constant burden. The only relief is when we were in quarantine and they had to shut down. In addition to the noise and the unruliness of the patrons and the honking of the horns and the yelling and the fighting and Uber and ride stopping out in front of our place and people lingering there on the sidewalks, there's also a lot of trash. Not only do they throw cups and bottles and beer cans around the base of our tower, they also find it fun to vandalize the construction barricades and signs, as well as the scooters. So this type of nightclub venue is not suitable for a residential tower. Thank you for listening.
My name is Tom Doria, and I live in the Towers of Channelside, 1209 East Cumberland Avenue, Unit 2702. I want to thank you for holding this workshop to address the hours in operation and the distance separation. We have recently learned with Park and Rec that having a bar and nightclub in one of our residential towers has been a real challenge for several reasons. With all the recent development, the noise bounces off the buildings, especially the new college, the USF College of Medicine. Even though I live in Tower 2, I could still hear the noise in the early hours of the morning. There's new residents that have been coming into the area, and I think we need to address this now. Here are some of the reasons I think it should be addressed. There's very loud music on that outdoor patio, and you can kind of hear it for blocks. So yeah, I hear it when I'm in the car driving toward my home. The Uber and Lyft drivers, while I'm driving, they're blocking traffic on Meridian Avenue, dropping and picking up customers. They're just waiting. There's complete lack of social distancing, and I've observed many a time where it's just groups of people. Very long lines. They're wrapped around our buildings here, waiting to get in. It's very discouraging. I do realize that we want business in that, and that's great for our community, our city. But I think this is more of a residential type of area, and it's not a nightclub type of district. This is in South Howard Avenue, and I would appreciate anything you can do to consider making this noise somewhat less intrusive. I appreciate your time, and again, thank you.
Harriet Brantner, 449 South 12th Street, Unit 2502, Tampa, Florida, 33602. And this is in regards to the upcoming October 22nd meeting, the Tampa City Council workshop on alcoholic beverages and noise. And we have been having problems in that Channelside district with the noise from the bars that are there. And my feeling is that something should be done. It is mostly residential in there now. And especially at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're hearing all that loud noise and yelling and screaming from downstairs, it wakes everybody up. So if you could please check into it and change the rezoning if it needs to be rezoned, or perhaps the noise ordinance itself, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
My name is Survi Kushatri. I live in 1209 East Cumberland Avenue in the Towers 2. This is for agenda number 11 for downtown noise. I don't feel that Park and Rec should be located underneath a residential area. Also, the noise is just beyond loud till 2, 3 in the morning, which is not appropriate for this area. I feel that there's a lot of rowdiness in this area because of the park and rec, that something should be done, or have a limit to maybe 11 o'clock and then shut the premises down. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adina Dyer, and I live in the Towers of Channelside, Unit 1501 in Tower 2. I've lived here since 2014. Our residents had constant noise complaints and issues with patrons of Asia. Once they closed, we enjoyed peace and quiet for about a year. Park and Rec opened in October of 2019, and once again, we have residents who are not able to sleep due to the noise. Since the USF building was completed and other buildings are under construction, the noise reverberations have substantially increased as it echoes between the buildings. I feel it's very important to get a more restrictive and enforced noise ordinance in place. With the Heron apartment towers and the addition, our first 5-star hotel, which also has private residences, it is very important to establish a balance between live, work, and play for everyone's quiet enjoyment. I have provided Karen Cox with a video of last Friday evening, actually Saturday morning at 2 a.m., when I was awakened in the middle of the night by noise from, I'm assuming, patrons of Park and Rec joining in the parking lot as they dispersed. And I was awakened from a dead sleep by all the noise from stereos in the cars. And I provide the video of that from inside my room. And then I stepped out on my balcony, and you can hear how loud it was. I hope this helps in coming to a conclusion of what the noise ordinance should be for a residential community. Thanks so much.
This is in reference to 11 on the agenda. My name is Marilyn Daly. My family and I have lived at the Towers of Channelside since 2011. I am also a member of the board of directors. Our neighborhood in the Channelside district of Tampa has evolved into a beautiful residential area with another 3,000 soon to be added units by the year end 2021-22. We now have a medical school, and shortly we will have a supermarket, upscale restaurants and stores to complete our neighborhood. Having a club open to 2:30 in the morning, 6 days a week, brings an unpleasant element to the mix. Loud music that rocks the building and neighbors' beds, yelling, fights which require the police to intervene, trash left around the area of the club by patrons of the club. We need a change in the noise ordinance to a lower level and restrictions on hours of noise and music. We all have a right to a peaceful environment and to enjoy our homes. Thank you for listening to me. Bye-bye.
My name is Steve Gersten. I live at 449 South 12th Street, Unit 1702, Tampa, Florida, which is Tower 1 of the Towers of Channelside. I am calling specifically about item number 11 on the agenda. I'd like to discuss and talk a little bit about the problems that the downtown area is having in Channelside and will continue to have as the area grows. I believe the most important, one of the most important areas of the City Council is to make sure that the residents of Channelside area and downtown are safe and live in an environment that's comfortable. You can walk your dog, take a walk with your wife or child or girlfriend, whatever it may be, a significant other at any time and feel safe. Right now, we have an issue with excessive noise from example of Park and Rec, and their noise is bouncing off the buildings that are being built. As more buildings are being built, it will add to the discomfort of all the residents that live here. The sound is extremely loud. It vibrates windows, it vibrates doors. You hear the bass into your apartments and condos in the area. There are an enormous amount of people without social distancing or wearing masks. Most of these people are young park and rec caters to the 18 to 25 crowd. There are sometimes hundreds and hundreds online or on the balcony. It is a very big nuisance and has changed the quality of life in the Channel Side and downtown area that will only get worse. Also, what a waste of resources. There are so many calls that we make to Tampa Police Department, to code enforcement, to the mayor's office, to city council office, city council members, etc. And this has to have some rules and regulations. There are examples of restaurants, so-called bars in the community like District Tavern that is more of a community location. They do play music. They don't play it very loud. They don't play it very late at night, and it's a community area. Same thing with the rules for Sparkman Walk. The music stops at a very reasonable time and they shut down the activity. The same thing with the Starship. You don't hear rock music at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning pounding our windows because we need to make sure that we change the rules to protect all the residents in the Channel Side and downtown areas. We need to make sure that restaurants and bars that stay up very late, that are more like clubs and bars, can't be there to 2, 3 in the morning.
Good morning, City Council. My name is David Sinclair, 8434 Pebble Circle, Tampa. I am calling in on file E-2020-48 on Sustainability and Resilience Plan. I want to thank our mayor and the entire City Council for the good foresight to continue seeking a workable sustainability and resilience plan for our community. Hang in there, you're doing a good job, work hard. Your willingness to improve on the plan's key components of a sensible deadline for this clean energy transition, but also I thank you for your desire to uplift the needs of our most vulnerable residents. This is significant. I thank you for the effort. Keep trying very hard on your good work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my name is Jean Strohmeyer. I am wishing to speak on agenda items for October 22nd, 2020 at 9 o'clock. Agenda items number 4, 5, 6, 10, and 13. Those items include, let's see, 4, E 2019-8 CH27, 5, agenda E 2019 CH25, 6, E 2019-8 CH27, and last but not least, the most important is number 10, CM 20-65142, and 13 is CM 20-64729. 3 of those are correct. 4, 5, 6, 10, and 13. There was no way to set all these out at the same time on the website in the link. So I'm speaking it. I set it in an email and I will be there on Thursday. Thank you very much. Have a good day and I will speak at the meeting. Please put me in the queue to speak. My email is perrylegal@msn.com. That's perrylegal@msn.com. I am Jean Strohmeyer. Please be sure that I am added to speak at those agenda items. Thank you.
This is Carol Kirschbaum, 449 South 12th Street, Unit 903, Tower 1. My comment is in regard to the decibel levels in the Channelside district. I have lived at the Towers of Channelside for over 12 years. There are many more school-age children here now than in the past. Currently, I have 2 young children under the age of 2 residing here full-time who are impacted by the nightly noise level rising upward from Park and Rec, making it very difficult to fall asleep even with the use of a noise whiteout device. The continuous sounds and vibration from the music and the rowdiness of the exiting crowds, along with amplifiers from cars blaring at closing, awaken us several times a week, continuing for up to 45 minutes, making it very difficult to fall back asleep. As with many other residents here, we need to be up and moving at 6:30 a.m., and that becomes extremely difficult with the persistent nightly awakening that interferes with our sleep pattern. The Towers is home to many more working people, including a good percentage that provide medical care at Tampa General Hospital, and adequate rest for them is essential as well. With the current Water Street project, we anticipate a massive increase in our immediate residential population. The nightly noise levels will soon impact many more local citizens living here. I urge you to take action now to lower the maximum decibel levels permitted for Channelside District, given the rising residential population, to ensure a peaceful, healthy, desirable place to live moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cameron McNabb, and I'm calling with regards to the workshop on Thursday morning about growth and development in the Tampa Bay area. So I am a 4th generation Tampa native. Half my family are one of the original cigar families here, and the other half have been business owners since the 1930s in the area. And I now have a little girl, and she's 5th generation. I grew up in Culver Bayou and then New Suburb Beautiful, and it was more so in the latter where I saw so much growth, unchecked growth and development, such that, like, particularly along Howard in that Soho area, that just in my childhood to teenage years, the area went from being just really, really family friendly to Howard became really dangerous, really crowded, so much traffic. And then as the bars started coming in, there would be just drunk people on our lawn or drunk people wandering down, Prospect or Morrison, and the area just changed a lot. And then I lived in a small apartment closer to Bayshore until my daughter was born. And I didn't even feel comfortable walking her on Bayshore, particularly now that we've had 4 deaths in 3 years on that, 2 years on that street. And it just didn't feel like a family friendly place or a safe place. High rises went up, traffic goes up, trees disappear. And it just was, it wasn't a good place for us. So we were forced to move out of there, and I'm currently looking to buy a home in South Tampa somewhere for us to live. And I'm priced out of the neighborhoods that I grew up in, which were more just upper middle class, and then now are definitely out of reach. So there's just a lot of development that's driven the prices up, and a lot of traffic that have made other areas just not good for families, not good for schools, not good to walk to school, nowhere to bike, no friendly bike lanes. So I'm very passionate about this issue. My family has invested so much in Tampa, and 4 of those generations, including my daughter, still live here. But all of us are in different ways kind of struggling with what's going on. And I don't know what Tampa will look like for my daughter, or whether we will even be here, be able to be here as she's growing up. I really ask that the council consider citizens who've been here and who want to stay in their home city. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nanette Hardy. I'm an owner at the Towers of Channelside, 1209 East Cumberland Avenue, Unit 508, Tampa, Florida, 33602. This is regarding agenda item number 11, noise downtown, for a city council meeting slated for 10/22/2020. I would just like to add to Tower 1 residents' complaints about Parks and Rec total disregard of our city ordinances regarding continuous noise, trash, and unruly and oftentimes drunken behavior of their patrons. It is totally unappealing and frightening at times to be even near Parks and Rec during weekend evenings when their customers are at their worst. Towers of Channelside is not a frat house, it is a residence. And the fact that the owners of Parks and Rec refuse to acknowledge that and manage the noise, trash, and behavior is unacceptable. How would they like it if we went to their home and started partying on their front yard until 3 a.m.? Also, due to the construction across the street, the sound from Parks and Rec now bounces off of the buildings and echoes back to the units of the towers, adding to the aggravation and noise level. This is another reason we need to manage the noise. Please keep downtown's thriving Channelside district vibrant, but also safe for all its residents who have made an investment in this area and are slowly watching it denigrate into a loud, trashy, and sometimes dangerous place to walk and live. Let's not ruin a good neighborhood, but keep it uplifted for future guests who will be visiting us for Gasparilla and the Super Bowl in 2021. Thank you for your time. Nanette Hardy, Towers of Channelside owner, Tower 2, Unit 508. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Ty Trainer. My address is 602 Channelside Drive, Tampa 33602. I'm calling on item 11 for October 22nd at 9 a.m. We are right beside Parks and Rec, which is on Meridian. And my complaints are that they have no delivery point whatsoever. So they block with big beer trucks and every other kind of food delivery truck, big 18-wheeler trucks. They block 12th Street, which is the street that backs up behind Parks and Rec. It's a 2-lane road. There's a no parking sign there. One of the other no parking sign has been taken down, and they completely block the one half of that street. It's only a 2-lane road, and they block one lane of it. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 different trucks all parked along there. And they deliver beer and food and whatnot to Parks and Rec, completely taking use of that street, at least half of it, away from people that are traveling. As far as alcohol related and noise, we are home sleeping when the Parks and Rec are making all the noise at night. But we see the effects of it the next morning where people have urinated in our parking lot on our property, which they have to go all the way around to the other side of the building and go in through no parking sign and fenced area, private property. And also they've not only urinated in there, but also left feces in there. And so I just don't think they have any right to be there. This is a residential and business type area. If they had some delivery point for the nightclub, that would be one thing, but their choices are to block 12th Street, which they're doing now, or to stop traffic on Meridian Street, at least one lane of it. It would be northbound on Meridian Street. My complaint is that they should not have been allowed to be there in the first place, and my concern is that they are nothing but a hazard to everybody living around there, and also carrying over to everybody working around there the next day. The medical school is right across the street, and it's just not a place for thank you very much. Again, this is Ty Trainer, and I can be reached at 813-229-1912.
Agenda item 11, downtown noise. City Council meeting 10/22/2020. Speaker Lawrence Douglas Hardy, owner Towers of Channelside, 1209 East Cumberland Avenue, Unit 508, Tampa, Florida, 33602. I'd like to add to the other Towers residents manifest complaints about Parks and Rec's nocturnal flouting of our city ordinances. They are a loud and troublesome nuisance to everyone who lives and works in the neighborhood. The noise they create is well known to all who live at both of our tower condos and to other properties in the Channelside district. Also, due to the robust construction across the street in Channelside, the sound from Parks and Rec now bounces off the new buildings and reverberates us back to us at the towers, exacerbating the aggravation and noise level. Also, the trash always left behind in front of Parks and Rec is a detriment and eyesore to any person out for some early morning exercise or a walk in our Channelside district. As bespeaks their actions and arrogance so far, the owners of Parks and Rec are not serious at all in curtailing the loud, obnoxious, and hellacious environment they have created for us all. I'm sure that in the very near future, when its 815 Water Street apartments open later this year, there will be a larger and more vociferous outcry against this plague on us all who live in one of the most beautiful and dynamic sections of downtown Tampa. Parks and Rec is a blatant hookup concept that should be located near UT or further out in our city. Its very presence in our midst lowers the value we place on our properties and quality of life for those of us who live in the Channelside district. The negative impact Park and Rec routinely displays is an actual blight on our neighborhood. One final point, the Towers of Channelside is not, I repeat, is not a retirement home. It is home to a dynamic mixture of professionals, young and old, who desire a healthier and more highly evolved atmosphere for us all to live and thrive in. Thank you for your time in hearing out our complaints, which are only beginning as all our residents in our area realize the detrimental impact Parks and Rec has on all our property values. The city of Tampa is hosting the Super Bowl early next year. Doesn't it benefit us all to relocate this loud, violent, and disruptive establishment to an area that doesn't tarnish Tampa's burgeoning reputation? Best, Lawrence Douglas Hardy, owner, Tower 2. Thank you. Name, Lawrence Douglas Hardy. Address, 1209 East Cumberland Avenue, Unit 508, Tampa, Florida, 33602. Owner, Towers of Channelside, Tower 2, Unit 508. Agenda item 11, noise downtown. City Council meeting for 10/22/2020. I'd like to add that the other tower residents manifest complaints about Parks and Rec's narc.
Yes, my name is Lou Geldery. I live at 1209 East Cumberland Avenue, Unit 2702, Tampa, Florida. And I'd like to comment on agenda item 11 related to Chapter 14 of the City of Tampa Code Ordinances. I'm on the board of directors of the Towers of Channelside Homeowners Association. And first, thank you for holding this workshop to address noise and hours of operation, as well as distance separation. Having a bar and nightclub in one of our residential towers has given me firsthand knowledge of how important these issues are to our residents at Channelside, both current and future. With 420 new apartments coming live in the spring of 2021, and more than twice that number within 18 to 24 months, this is going to be a larger issue that will affect many and may be a deterrent to someone moving downtown, specifically to Water Street and Channelside. I'd like to give you some examples of what we've seen to date, having Park and Rec in our neighborhood. Amplified music on an outdoor patio that could be heard for blocks until 2 a.m. Vibrations to residents in the building from this very same music until 2 a.m. Long lines of people waiting to get in that wrap around the corner. Complete lack of social distancing. Garbage and trash on sidewalks in front and surrounding the building. Fights and even an assault on one of our residents walking his dog. Uber, Lyft drivers blocking traffic on Meridian to drop off and pick up customers. I'm sure I forgot a few. And I want City Council to know we're not being unrealistic. Business is good. It's actually great for our community, but there should be restrictions as to hours of operation and noise. Having this area zoned as EBOR no longer is an option. Our condominiums range from $375,000 to over $2 million. We have 243 condos in our complex. Our contribution to the City of Tampa's property tax base is measurable. We're also familiar that you've made changes using 915 North Franklin Street as an example. And we sincerely ask that you make the necessary changes to protect our investment in downtown and to encourage others to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Chair, that concludes the public comment portion of the agenda.
Thank you very much. All right. We now go to item number 2, and which will be Police Chief Brian Dugan with the Tampa Police Department. Do we have Chief Dugan on the line?
I do see Chief Dugan logged on. He just needs to unmute himself.
All right, Chief, if you can unmute yourself and would like to begin. Chief Dugan.
Good morning, Council. It's Brian Dugan, the Chief of Police. We have a few slides for you that we're going to jump right into on our annual bike report. Are we able to get to the first one? Good. Okay, so the first slide is it shows our total calls for service. So you can see this is from October of 2019 to September of 2020. And so we had over 613,000 calls for service. And the number of bicycle stops is about 2.22% of all of the activity that the Tampa Police Department does. And so I think that's very important that it shows exactly what a small fraction of the activity of the Tampa Police Department. And when you look at the next slide of last year versus this year, and our total calls for service are down, I would attribute that due to the COVID. But when you look at the number of traffic stops, because bicycle stops are considered a traffic stop, we had about 47,000 traffic stops for this time frame, and 1,340 of them were bike stops. And out of the total traffic stops, it's a little just under 3% of what we do. And so the next slide will show you the number of bicycle citations from last year to this year. Last year we had 43 citations. This year we've given 46 citations. Of the 46 citations that we've issued on bicycles, 22 are crash related. And so 24 are actual stops of people on bicycles. Of those 24 stops, 17 have been no bike lights. And then we have issued almost 240, we've done 248, so almost 250 lights have been issued. The demographics for the 46 citations were 18 African Americans, 13 Hispanics, and 14 white people. You can see the number of warnings we gave out and the number of arrests that have been made off. If you look at the right side, you'll see that that is the year that I'm looking at is 2019 to 2020. And then the next slide shows an overview of our crime maps to the number of bicycle stops. So if you look at the green dots, those are the number of bicycle stops where predominantly they are happening. And the backdrop, the colored grids are where some of our crime is. And that is all I have. So open the floor, Mr. Chairman, to any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the chief?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilmember Citro. Yes, sir.
Chief Dugan, thank you very much for this report. Is the administration has informed us that they are moving toward the Open Gov platform for strategic performance data this year. Is this type of reporting going to be on that platform?
Yes, that is our goal to get that done.
So this type of information will be available not only to City Council, but for the Tampa citizens on a 24/7 basis?
Yes.
All right. Then can I, Mr. Chair, if you do not mind, can I entertain a motion that says that this data will now be open on the our city website on the Gov platform, so that next year this report will not be necessary unless city council specifically asks for it? Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Evidently, we lost him.
I'm
here. Go ahead.
Councilman Citro, may I ask? This is Martin Shelley.
Yes,
may I ask? Is that a rhetorical question, or are you entertaining a motion?
Well, no, I would like to see if that's permissible at this time by the chair. I'm asking his permission.
If you'd like to go ahead and so we keep the meeting moving, if this is your motion, who else chimed in to speak? I heard somebody else's voice. Was it Carlson?
Dingfelder.
Dingfelder?
Yes, Dingfelder.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for this presentation. I have a question on this last slide that's still up in front of us. It says TPD Big 5 offenses with bicycle stops. And then it shows the geographic District 1, 2, and 3. Can you explain that a little more detail?
Okay, our Big 5 offenses are what we are mostly concerned about because it truly affects the quality of life. And so it's aggravated assaults, which include, people being shot at, firearms, knives, our robberies, our burglaries, our auto burglaries, and auto theft. And then if you look at the shading, it's if it's red, it's 43 or more of those type of offenses. The yellow, more the orange is 32 to 42, and then the yellow is 21 to 31.
Right, but what's the relationship between a bike stop and the Big 5 offense? Is this a bike stop that's specifically related to a suspect, riding a bike who was suspected of committing one of those Big 5s, or has been convicted?
Yeah. Well, that's what. I believe if you recall, you had asked last year for us to show you where the crime is and where the bike stops are. And so that's what we're trying to show is on a map of where the actual bike stops are happening. And then we overlay it on crime. Now, the issue is in certain neighborhoods, their mode of transportation, a lot of times to commit crime is on a bicycle. And so that's the important part. I have some examples of, people have committed crimes, aggravated assault on while riding a bike and shooting at people. We had an attempted kidnapping at 1602 East North New Orleans, where somebody came up on a bike, tried to snatch a kid. We had 1209 East Seneca. We had a firearm there where somebody started shooting at someone's car. We've had burglaries in Drew Park, people on bicycles and things like that. And so that's all. We're just trying to show the green dots indicate where the majority of the bike stops happen.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Carlson.
Go ahead, Carlson.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I understand the map better now. The green dots are overlaid on top of the yellow and the red to show where the crime is. Mr. Citro, I just wanted to make a compromise suggestion on your proposed motion. I think it's helpful to council to be able to see this information every year. I don't think it's necessary that the chief or that any TPD officer make the presentation. So I know we have a standing request that every year this information be presented to council. I think if we could just get the written report with the graphic each year without the actual in-person report, I'd be happy with that as a compromise. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Miranda here. Mr. Chairman, I agree with both Mr. Citro and Mr. Dingfelder regarding the item.
I understand that this was council's request, and I think they've shown what we were looking for. Also, that if it's done in a mannerism, and I'm sure it is, when they said that this is on file, as soon as this happens, it goes on the internet on a daily basis. It's updated 365 days a year, I assume. So therefore, I think what we're doing now, if Mr. Dingfelder is correct in asking that question, which I'm sure he is, regarding that at the end of the year, we have a composite of what's happened, but no presentation unless we request one. And I agree with both Mr. Citro and Mr. Dingfelder.
Thank you very much. Councilman Carlson.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I will strongly vote against the motion with respect to Mr. Citro. I think it's great that that there will be an open government system and that data like this will be put online. But you all will remember that this report is a result of a racist policy by the last administration that was condemned by the United States Justice Department, even though they were asked only to do a process analysis, not a full civil rights investigation. They still condemned the city of Tampa in the last administration for breaching civil rights. And the community expects us to monitor this. And if something doesn't come before us, it doesn't necessarily provide the transparency that the community wants. And this policy by the last administration is the cause of a lot of the protests that we have now, and the attitude and culture built around it is a result of many of the complaints of the human rights and civil rights community. And I think it's essential that we continue to look at this. It's not comfortable for us to look at it because now whatever the numbers are, they're on us, not the last administration. But we have to continue to monitor this and be public about it. And if the numbers are good and they're better than they were before, then we can celebrate that. But I think the police chief presented for 2 or 3 minutes, and it's not that much of a burden other than this long discussion about not presenting. So I may be the only vote against it, but I feel very strongly that it's important for us to be transparent, not just to post things online, but also to present where the public can see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Sure.
Go ahead, Councilman Goode.
I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Carlson. I think the community will be very upset if we don't bring this back every year. It's great that we're going to have it on the website and an amendment for a report, but I think for the community's wholehearted felt issue about what transpired, I think that for the chief to just come back and make a 1 or 2 minute presentation like he's doing, I don't think it's going to hurt at all. Again, it's just showing transparency. The results look very good, but I can't support the motion because I know the community will be up in arms, especially in my district, if I went along with that motion. So I'm going to decline that motion.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, hearing none. Councilman Citro, you have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
After hearing some of the other council members, I will agree that a written report, an annual written report, but however, this is going to be a 24/7 accumulation of these reports daily at any time for the public to see. So I will amend my motion to saying that a once-a-year report is still needed, but it should be written, but it will be written and not an in-person report.
Mr. Chairman, Miranda again.
Go ahead.
If you recall what I said earlier, that the daily report, but at the end, you'll have a composite of all the daily reports that are submitted to the council after the 365 days. So my report, my motion, I didn't have a motion, but I would expect that the maker and whoever is going to be the second, that this report comes in on a daily basis, which is even much sooner if we see a problem occurring than what we have now, because now we have to just get a report whatever, every 3 months or 6 months or a year. But this is a daily report that comes on the computer that tells us what's going on and what happened on that instant of time. And this is about time for the community. Instead of waiting a year or 6 months or 3 months to find out, we are actually looking at it in the period of time when it's happening. And at the end of the year, you get a composite of that to focus on everything that's happened for 365 days a year. I think, in all due respect to everyone, I think that this report will enhance the curtailment of something that may be going awry on the wrong side of justice. That everything is composite, everything meets the criteria that this council and this city has set, and that we will be better off long-term by seeing it on a daily basis other than once a year or once every 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Anybody?
once again,
Go ahead, Councilman Goods.
I do agree with Councilman Miranda. He is right on a daily basis. He's right at any report we might can catch things, but I just firmly believe the situation that did occur, unfortunately, I still think a 2-minute overview by the chief or his designee still wouldn't be a bad thing. It's just my own personal opinion, and I know the community would really probably want that. So again, I'm going to have to stick by my original, but I respect the other council members, and they are right. They will report. They are right about the annual, but I just think still what transpired, the chief, I believe, still needs to just make a couple of minutes about what's going on and let us know what's happened.
All right. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Not to belabor the point, but with all due respect to Mr. Citro, I agreed with you, but then Mr. Carlson and Mr. Goods were persuasive to me. So I'll be voting with them to leave the status quo at least for another year.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I withdraw my motion.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 3. Item number 3 regarding the West Tampa Overlay District Development Design Standards.
Good morning, Chair. This is Carol Post, the Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. I believe we were going to shift the order of some of the forthcoming items relative to the growth management workshop items.
Okay. Go ahead.
Respectfully.
How you'll begin, and I'll just mark it off the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the accommodation. And I can give a little bit of a backstory for that. We'd like to start with actually the last item, item number 14, which was an add-on item. This is the administrative text amendments for the Land Development Code.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, and with respect to that, and I appreciate that accommodation, as you see, we do have a number of presentations in response to a number of motions that have been made over time. Some of those are initiatives moving forward, and some are actually in support of strategic and community priorities. So I appreciate the opportunity to shift those. The clerk's office has the reorder in place, and it will allow us to bundle some of the related subjects together and also address some of the matters in an order of progressive complexity. Some of the items will get presented and discussed individually, as in the 2 next items, the administrative text amendments and the West Tampa overlay, but others will get presented in a collective manner with respect to growth management. So as we move forward, I'm happy to just clarify the approach we're going to take before each one so that we can easily have the council and members of the public follow along.
All right, good.
Thank you, I appreciate it. May I just do a sound check for a couple of members? They had some technical issues before we start. Is Andrea Zellman on? Andrea, are you on?
Yes, I am, and I'm sorry, we're having trouble with our visuals, so but I am on audio.
Okay, and is LaShawn Dock on, available? LaShawn?
Are you following talking?
Okay.
Here, yeah.
We'll come back to
I'll just come to it on this. Just give me a second.
We'll come back to LaShawn. I apologize. We've got folks in a few different locations. So let me just proceed then with agenda item number 14, which will be our number 3 in presentations. And this is administrative text amendments for our land development code. So if we can have the presentation for number 3, thank you very much. And I'll be presenting this with Andrea Zellman. So what this reflects, if you can go to the next slide, please. This reflects essentially the first step of many that will begin to make changes within our land development code to align it with our strategic priorities and the needs of our communities and neighborhoods. The background of this, it relates to our mayor's advisory teams that convened over the summer and into the fall. All of those teams came back with a host of recommendations, but several of them included recommendations that had to do with changes to our land development code. We collected all of those recommendations, and we combined them with recommendations that had already been collected for probably for a couple of years back, many that came from the city council directly, and others that came from residents, neighborhood groups, developers, and those that interact with our city codes regularly. What we did then is we actually conducted a pretty comprehensive assessment to assess each recommendation and each request and put those together into a comprehensive report. Next slide, please. And this is, the next slide will reflect where it's just a snapshot of the way we went about addressing this. We tried to look at the requirements in the context of their subject matter. So in color code, then the pie chart will reveal where we have a percentage of matters relative to whether they concern zoning or design or mobility or notice requirements. And in fact, the largest pie squares there, almost 50%, have to do with administrative matters and those things that had simply become illogical or obsolete. And that's what we're addressing today. Next slide. Because there were so many requirements and requests that came out of this comprehensive assessment, we're going to address it in at least 4 phases. Some of this may evolve over time, but today is phase 1A. This is focused on administrative cleanup matters and those things where we're correcting errors, conflicts, we're unifying some procedural aspects. These were things that frankly were just a bit of an irritant to people, if anything, and were certainly confusing at some point. As we move ahead in time, particularly into 2021 and beyond, we will begin to get progressively more complex. Phase 1B looks at some of the changes in use. It looks at some of our parking requirements and reorganizing things for, again, ease and simplification. Phase 2 and 3 become more progressively complex, getting into design code amendments, some of the affordable housing aspects, and so on. So without going into those details, those things will be laid out in much more detail as we'll be presenting today's. But the message here is to know that there is much work to do to have our land development code cleaned and modernized and aligned with our priorities, and this is today is step 1. Next slide, please. There are 13 items that will be presented. I'm not going through these in detail. The font is way too small, but we do have a 1 slide per item that we will take you through very quickly. These are fairly cut and dry items, but we do want to ensure that the council and members of the public can see each of the 13 items in terms of what we're proposing for changes immediately on the immediate horizon. So for that, I'm going to actually turn over to Andrea Zellman from our law department. She has been the author of this ordinance and can walk us through each of these 13 items very quickly. Andrea?
Good morning, Council. Andrea Zellman, Deputy City Attorney. If you could go to the next slide. As Carol mentioned, we took this step first because we could. Your code, and we're going to actually talk about this code provision later, your code limits Chapter 27 changes to 2 cycles per year. However, there's an exception for things that address inconsistencies within the code and with other chapters and procedural. So we could move more quickly on these type of changes. Although, as you know, nothing is quick. Any change to Chapter 27 requires hearings at the Planning Commission first, and then a workshop, and then before it can come to council. But again, this was the low-hanging fruit. that we wanted to address as quickly as possible. And while these changes seem very minor in nature, and many of them are, some of them actually do have a significant impact on both the development community and the folks in the neighborhoods that pay attention to zoning. So for example, this first one, we found when we went through the code that there was a lot of inconsistency with regard to notice. For certain applications, applicants had to send mail notice but not post a sign. For others, they had to post a sign but not send mail notice. And then for others, they had to do all three. We made it uniform and required the same notice for everything. I think that makes it easier for an applicant to avoid the possibility of misnoticing. It also is more fair to the public because they have certain expectations that if they see a sign go up in their neighborhood, they'll typically then get something in the mail, or if they get something in the mail, they know where the property is because there's a sign there. So this way, it's all uniform. I think that's better for everyone. Next slide. Again, this is the type of thing that can cause headaches for everyone involved in the process, and that is the code right now sometimes says calendar days, sometimes says working days, sometimes says city working days. So again, to avoid confusion and inconsistency, we've simply changed everything to calendar days, and where we had to, we adjusted the time periods to reflect that. Next slide. Another thing that we noticed was that throughout Chapter 27, sometimes it referred to the department, sometimes it referred to planning and development, sometimes it referred to PDD. We changed everything to simply say the department. We added a definition for the department. And one of the reasons we did this is the city has a tendency to sometimes change department names, and we didn't want to have to go back and amend the code every time that happened. And as you know, within the last few weeks, PDD was in fact changed to Development and Growth Management. So this is a timely change that we're proposing. Next slide. As some of you will recall, a few years ago, Chapter 27, Chapter 27 was amended to incorporate Chapter 13, which used to be a standalone tree and landscape code. However, we found that Chapter 27 still has a lot of references to Chapter 13, which again creates confusion for all the users of the code. So we went back and cleaned that up to refer to the correct code section. Next slide. Councilman Dingfelder, I think you had expressly asked for this particular change, and that is applicants requesting review hearings before council are required to submit a DVD of the prior hearing. That's costly and unnecessary because nowadays all the hearings are available, recordings of them, I should say, are available online. So there's really no need for anyone to create DVDs. So again, we're changing the code to remove that requirement. Next slide. This is something that was raised by those involved with the Variance Review Board. They were the only board that required 4 votes to take action. All the other similar boards simply require a simple majority. That 4-person requirement was creating problems and delays for a lot of applicants. So we just we're proposing to change the code to make it consistent with all the other codes and just require a simple majority for action. Next slide. This was something that was recommended both by the development community and the staff, and that is right now in your alcoholic beverage special use permit requirements, all applicants are required to submit topographic surveys and tree surveys. That makes sense in a case where someone is building a new building or expanding upon an existing building. But in a situation where there's already an existing building, say a restaurant which now desires to serve wine and beer, there's no reason they should have to submit a tree survey or a topographic survey, which can be very costly and can take a lot of time when surveyors get busy. So we changed this language to apply only when there were actually going to be physical changes to the site. Next slide. This is a change to section 27138, which allows people with an approved PD to ask to be allowed to make non-substantive changes or substantial changes to that site plan. Notice is required, but it has always been unclear to both applicants and those receiving the notice what they were supposed to do with that notice. So we're changing it to make it more clear to require the applicant to provide notice that the decision itself can be appealed from. Next slide. So this is section 27149, which is where all the notice requirements are housed. So again, we're changing everything to make all the references in the code to this section. We are proposing to remove the requirement that a plan development applicant send a copy of the site plan to participating notice associations. That can be costly and again take time. And the fact of the matter is the site plans are available online on Acela. And so this, removing this requirement reduces paper, avoids unnecessary printing costs, and again recognizes that in the modern world this is all available online. By the same token, right now applicants have to basically mail or hand deliver their certificate of compliance with the notice requirements, and we're changing the language to allow that all to be done electronically. Again, moving into the 21st century. Next slide. As council might recall, back in 2019, the Florida legislature adopted a bill or passed a bill that created uniform timeframes across the state for the review and approval of development permits and development orders. And so this particular code section simply incorporates those timeframes into our code. Next slide. As council will again recall, within the last year, we discovered that our stormwater advisory list had an unfortunate reference to the term redlining. So the name of the list was changed, but Chapter 27 still referred to it by that other name, so we're updating the code accordingly. Likewise, the code still had references to things like the Board of Adjustment, which more than 20 years ago was changed to be the Variance Review Board. So again, we found a lot of outdated language in the code, and we're proposing to change it to reflect the proper names for those boards, and in that case, that list. Next slide. This was something that staff identified. We have language in the code that governs where you can park an RV or a boat on a residentially zoned property, and it was very unclear and people were having trouble interpreting that language. So we did not change the language substantively, we simply rewrote it to make it more clear. Next slide. And this was just a change to correct a scrivener's error. The last time there were significant changes made to Chapter 27. They changed the buffer requirement between Group C uses and residential uses. However, apparently when the changes went to Muni Code, that change was missed. So again, this is just a cleanup, making sure that it gets properly changed on the on Muni Code as well. And then the final slide just shows you the timing. We've already briefed council members. There was a briefing on this proposed code change at the Planning Commission. Today we're having this workshop on it on November 9th. This will go before the Planning Commission board for them to determine consistency with the comp plan. And then we're proposing to put this on your November 19th agenda for the first hearing on the ordinance. So with that, I'll just thank you and ask if whether there are any questions.
Do we have any questions from council members?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Dingfelder, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Zuman, and any staff that you have working on this with you. We appreciate it. Cleanup's always good, and we should probably do it, you know, at least annually. Andrea, in regard to slide 6, if you could put that, or staff could put that back up. Slide number 6. There we go. Okay. And of course, Joe and I have served on the VRB for many years. Lots of experience on the VRB. My concern is this. I'm not sure what the quorum requirement is for the VRB. I don't know if we need to get into those weeds. But my concern is, let's say for argument's sake, they have a quorum of 4 people, and then one person says, oh, I got to recuse myself, and they're down to 3 people. And then they go ahead and hear a case, and under this revision, they could, you know, kind of an important issue to a neighborhood, and sometimes a variance can even affect a multifamily project, could pass 2 to 1. So I understand the concern. The concern is, well, you know, we're not getting full boards with the VRB. It's hard to get more members to vote and that sort of thing. But instead of just a simple majority, maybe all the boards should just be at a minimum of 3 votes, you know, perhaps as a compromise.
Well,
and so if you have 5 members, then you have 3 votes for a majority. But I think that if it got down to 2 to 1, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I think that's really not right. So anyway.
Well, if I could, Mr. Dingfelder, with regard, and this is Andrea Zellman again, with regard to the example you gave, the way the code language reads, it has to be a simple majority of those present and empowered to vote. So if, for example, there were 4 people present, but one had a conflict and couldn't vote, then it could not move forward, because it has to be a simple majority of those present and empowered to vote.
Well, if you recuse yourself, you're not empowered to vote, and so then it goes down to the 3 people who are remaining, they're empowered to vote. I think it's getting down into the weeds, but I'd like you guys to look at that before you transmit it.
Yeah, we'll look at that. And again, you can only have a quorum if you have 4 voting members present. So I think your question is addressed, but we will look at that more carefully. And if we need to tweak it, we will.
I wasn't sure about the quorum part of it. Okay, and my next question, if you could go to slide 9. Okay, so I understand the concept. Sometimes we have PD site plans that are, you know, 20 pages, you know, that sort of thing, and, you know, very complex and all that. And I'm not saying that that the 2 or 3 impacted neighborhood associations should receive that, but I also don't think we should delete it completely. So what I'm going to suggest is a friendly suggestion again to staff before you transmit it, is I think number 1, that the neighborhood should get an 8.5 by 11 copy of the front page of the PD. And I know you can't learn a lot from that, but at least it's helpful. And then number 2, that the notice language would have the electronic link, the specific electronic link to where they could find the PD that's been submitted. So in other words, we can't rely on people to you know, we shouldn't make the neighborhood associations dig into SIRE. I mean, that's hard enough for council members, you know, and staff to try and find stuff on SIRE. Sometimes the SIRE list, the clerk's list on SIRE has 10 items and you can't find stuff. So if we had the specific link to the PD, then I think that would be fair to everybody.
That's a good suggestion, and another thought might be that the applicant could send a PDF of the site plan to the email address, you know, filed with the city for that particular neighborhood association to whom they're required to give notice. We'll look at that too and see if we can think of a better way to do that.
I think as long as the link is typed on the notice, I think that's adequate. And then that, if the neighborhood says, "Oh, what's this about?" they can always type in the link and take a look at the 20 pages of PD. Anyway, okay, that's my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to go fast.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Councilman Goode.
we'll go to slide 6. Ms. Zelman,
Yes, sir.
I see Mr. Deanfield's point, but I also heard the language or the reason why you gave Mr. Deanfielder. I think if you continue to go down that line to go with what you're proposing, I think certain language needs to be implemented within that so people can understand why that is the way it is. Because sometimes you can read but not read with understanding sometimes. But if it's a little more cleaned up and you go what you want to propose, then people will understand that, so there will be no confusion when it's time to vote or there's not a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
Yes, this is Carlson.
Here. Go ahead, sir.
Ms. Zellman, and sorry if I didn't hear all of this, but in terms of communicating with the neighborhoods and residents, they want more communication, not less. And we've had a lot of conversations about doing that. A lot of times neighbors feel blindsided because they see a sign come up and they didn't get notice in advance. And this is not a legal issue. It's more of just a community engagement issue. Also, people have a piece of land that could end up, it may already be entitled, that could end up having 300 units and they don't know and they think it's a park. And then suddenly from their perspective, we take it away from them. I think that, separate from the legal stuff, we have to do a lot more proactive communicating on planning and planning laws with the neighborhood associations. And several of you all, thank you for met with the South of Gandy folks last week. City Council cannot meet with these neighborhood groups to talk about issues that could end up discussing specific land use cases. But that kind of education that you all did on Tuesday is really good because the more informed the populace is and the more informed neighborhood associations are, the better they're able to articulate what they want and understand how to navigate the rules and help us do that. In terms of communicating with neighborhoods, I wish, and again, I apologize if you said this already, but I wish there was a way on Excella that that people could opt into something like a weekly newsletter that would automatically give them an update of all the projects happening in their neighborhood. And it could be neighborhood leaders who probably should automatically get it, but then also residents who are interested in something like that. So if there's a way that we can use technology to communicate more and be more proactive. I also know there are people that don't have email, and so we need to think about how to communicate with them. But if we are taking the information and pushing it out instead of just leaving it passively on the website, it would be very helpful to residents and neighborhood associations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
One other quick follow on.
Go ahead.
Okay, in regard to slide 9 again, Andrea, this discussion is good because now we're sort of wrestling with this, and Mr. Carlson brings up a good point. Is now we're in this electronic age, which I'm not very good at, but fortunately others are. Do we include a link reference on the immediate neighbors notice letter? So in other words, when we send, any petitioner has to send notice to the immediate neighbors within 250 feet typically. If we don't, we should include a link for that neighbor so that neighbor can see the application, no matter what type of application it is. And also if it's a site plan controlled application like a PD or the other site plan control, then it would also link to the PD. So I think we should work with our technology folks before we amend this code and really get with the times to figure out how to include that link. Maybe it's like you say, maybe it's a PDF link that the petitioner has or something like that, because at that point, I guess it's not really filed, or it's just been filed. So they might not have a link to the city, but they would have their own PDF link to their own document. So anyway, let's try and include that in this cycle, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, Ms. Post, do you wish to continue, or does that?
No, Chair, thank you very much. I think we're concluded with this topic. I appreciate the council members' input, which we will incorporate into the final edition of the ordinance. I think just mindful to note, we are certainly in support of communication and outreach to neighborhoods, communities, and any stakeholders that get impacted by building and development, and can certainly take the feedback that we've heard. There are a number of activities going on within the Development Services Center that will provide some additional visibility as well, including some project maps that will come online shortly and the like. So some of these things are running parallel. They may not get incorporated into the language of this particular ordinance, but they are programmatically proceeding and will get institutionalized. So really appreciate that feedback. If there's no other questions on this item, we can proceed. I'm happy to introduce the next item.
Go ahead. I believe the next one will be the West Tampa Overlay District.
Mr. Chairman, Martin Shelby, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
A question, will this be coming back to council before it goes to the Planning Commission, or does this require, or is it the intention to have this transmitted to the Planning Commission, this previous item? Item number 3, or number 14
yes,
on the agenda?
This is already scheduled to be heard at the Planning Commission on November 9th. And then our plan was to bring the final ordinance to council on November 19th.
Okay, would that have required a motion of council to get it on the Planning Commission's agenda?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Post, go ahead.
Okay, thank you again, Chair. Appreciate you letting us move that item up so that we could get it out of the way as a relatively cut and dry item. We'd like to move on now to agenda item number 3, which is a presentation of the West Tampa overlay modifications. And just as a heads up, following that item, we would like to address agenda item number 7, which is an ordinance relating to the front porch setbacks. Both of those items will be addressed by LaShawn Dock from our Planning Development Design Coordination team. LaShawn, are you on and available?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much, Carol. And good morning, Chairman and Council members. LaShawn Dock, Development and Growth Management. I'm going to present for you this morning an item regarding a privately initiated text amendment. This is an amendment to the West Tampa Overlay District Standards. Next slide, please. And Council, I'd like to mention that this has been an effort that was started. It is, as I mentioned, it's privately initiated. It's the West Tampa CRA that joined with the West Tampa Community Advisory Committee to submit these changes to the overlay district language. And Jesus Nino is the newly appointed CRA manager for West Tampa. And I'd like to recognize him. And also Carlos Ramirez, he's the West Tampa CAC Infrastructure Subcommittee Chairman. And Carlos has been in this effort from the beginning and working with us and getting this moving forward. So next slide, please. So this request is a request to amend section 27-241. That's the West Tampa Overlay District Standards. This is a part of the January 2020 amendment cycle. Next slide, please. So what I will review with you today is the background information on the request, the text amendment language, and also the processing schedule. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a part of the January 2020 amendment cycle. This planning effort was started several years ago. The West Tampa CAC went to the West Tampa CRA, and they have worked together with the city's planning department to bring forth these changes. The goal is to update certain review procedures regarding exterior elevations, and also design elements within the district. And also, anytime we look at a chapter for text amendment, we also try to do cleanup if necessary within that section of the code. So you'll see that included also and mentioned in today's presentation. And next slide, please. So this is the boundary for West Tampa. This map is an aerial map, and it identifies the West Tampa overlay district. The outline in red, or the orangish red color with the stripes in it, that is the West Tampa overlay boundary. The area in yellow, it identifies the CRA boundary, and that is just for reference. And the next slide, please. So the overlay language is divided within the commercial district and also within the residential district, and we'll review the commercial components first. So I just want to provide you an overview of the changes proposed. Next slide. So what we've amended within this area is the first thing is the department name. So any place where the code references Land Development Coordination, or LDC, we have removed those references. We've also addressed some of the submission language, which refers to submittal of hard copy site plans. And as you know, we have a SOLA system now, and hard copy plans are not required for submittal. So those are some of the cleanup items we have corrected. Also, in starting with the landscape plan language, we corrected references to the old chapter of the code where natural resources was located under Chapter 13. We've added shade tree caliper requirement that has been amended from 4 inches to 3 inches. Next slide, please. The principal building shall be designed and designated to have a principal entry. So that is one of the first changes that are made within the commercial building requirements. Another change that is being made is the screening requirements. That's been amended from 100% to a minimum of 50% opacity. And what we've also done is for applications for major renovations and new construction, that is being amended so that that would reflect the architectural design of the majority of the block face. So this is to address any infill and redevelopment which may occur for consistency on the block. Next slide, please. We've added also accessory structure requirements. So accessory structures which are visible from the public right-of-way shall be architecturally finished with materials that are consistent with the finish of the main structure. Next slide, please. And with the parking standards regarding access, the community desire to have, whenever an alley exists, that vehicular access should be located from that alley whenever possible. And regarding structured parking, it should be architecturally embellished and integrated within the overall design of the development. And that is on all sides of that structure where it would exist. And next slide, please. The last change in the commercial section is a change that is an update and recommendation from staff, and that is to update the lighting design standards as notated, just so that they are consistent with the current IES lighting handbook. Next slide, please. So now we get into the residential section. Next slide, please. So the first changes within the residential section are regarding the fencing and wall standards. So chain link fencing is only allowed during construction, and it shall be removed prior to any CO being issued, any certificate of occupancy. Decorative fencing materials have been added to the code, so decorative fencing is encouraged. And what has happened here is the committee has agreed to add in the fencing materials that are allowed within the overlay district. And the last area is wherever retaining walls exist, the goal is to maintain the retention walls to the extent possible, instead of completely removing them. So that section has been added to the code also. Next slide, please. Regarding alley access, this is the same as it was for the commercial. So for the residential, wherever an alley exists, I encourage that is used as the access point. And then the next point is regarding the roof pitches. So for residents, the minimum roof pitch is now at a 412. The code previously was a 612. And what we've done is we've included pictures showing a roof pitch at a 412 and a roof pitch at a 612. The picture on the left is the 412 roof pitch, and then the picture on the right is the 612 roof pitch. It's just to show that visually, at a distance, there's not much of a difference between the roof pitches. And so the minimum is the 412, and that would be the standard for the overlay. Next slide, please. The last section of changes within the overlay code are the accessory structures. So the accessory structures shall be architecturally finished, and they shall adhere to the building style of the principal structure. And for accessory parking structures, and these are ones that are within the residential areas, they should have the same design and architectural features as the principal structures. And also when they are oriented toward the front yard, they shall be constructed no closer to the street than the front wall of the principal structure. Next slide, please. So this language has been, it has been reviewed with the West Tampa CAC. They've held numerous community meetings, and any of the changes that have been that have actually been made along the way of developing these changes to the code have all gone back to the CAC for their vote and approval. Staff has routed this request for comment. We received no objections. We've held a public information meeting on the language, and the next steps ahead are for a planning commission briefing in November on the 9th, and then planning commission public hearing is on December 14th. City Council first reading would be January 14th, and City Council second reading would be February 18th, and that's for adoption. Next slide, please. And this concludes my presentation for the West Tampa overlay language.
All right, do we have any questions?
Have any questions?
Yes, Councilman Good.
Reviewing the presentation, council's been having a time with what I call splitting lots. I didn't see that in the West Tampa overlay presentation because I know that's been an issue all over. And I'm just wondering, Ms. Dodd, was that brought up, or that's something that council, staff will be bringing back to us later when we deal with these other codes? Because that's been a big problem about these splitting of lots where we are approving some person, but someone else gets denied. And I just want to ask that question, whether it's this overlay here.
Yes, Councilman. It is not addressed within this language, but we will have that discussion later this morning with item number 12, discussing the lot sizes. But it was not addressed within this specific request, this text amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Councilman
Yes.
Dingfelder.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dodd. There was I'll be very generous. There was a hideous house that was built on Main Street between McDill and McDill and Howard, and it's aluminum house. It doesn't seem to conform with anything that you've been talking about. It's caught a lot of neighbors' attention because it's right there on Main Street. Do these proposed changes address that type of construction? So hopefully that doesn't happen in the future. You're familiar with that one?
But Councilman, with that particular home, I am not.
I know Councilman Maniscalco is.
It's like a metal warehouse wannabe mid-century design, but it's very odd. If you drive down Main Street off of McDill, you'll see it.
Okay. All right, Ms. Doc, if you're not familiar with it, just ask around or take a ride down Main Street between McDill and Howard, and you'll see it. And make sure that type of really insensitive design and is addressed in.
Absolutely, I will, Councilman Dingfelder. Yes, I'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, this is Carlson.
Go ahead, sir.
Just quickly, I want to thank the staff in the mayor's office for being proactive on issues like this, bringing all these plans up to date and doing planning and in period, and building up our planning initiative in house. I think residents will benefit from it, whether they know directly that you all have done this or not, but it will make our community so much better than it's ever been. So thank you all for helping with all of this.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Next presentation, I believe, is the front porch ordinance, item number 7, correct?
Correct. Thank you so much, Chairman and council members. This item is a publicly initiated text amendment. This is requested a change to Code Section 27-159, permitted projections into front yards. Next slide, please. So this request would allow front porches to project into required front yards in residential districts. So this would include all RS or residential single family and RM, residential multifamily districts, along with PD's planned development districts, which allow residential development. And that is the language that you see before you. You will notice that the language that is actually in red text is the changes that are proposed. The underline is the new language to be added, and extracted through language is the language to be removed in the code section. And next slide, please. And the request is also within this section of the code to allow it within the PD districts within a front yard setback that is less than 12 feet. So it would not allow the porch to project if the front yard setback is less than 12 feet. This is an effort to avoid having placement within the right-of-way and to ensure that building codes can be met regarding property lines and the placement of the structure within that. And next slide, please. This one is a short one. This is on the schedule, of course, this morning for workshop and discussion. If it is council's desire, this is language that I can bring back prior to taking it forward to the Planning Commission. But this is the change that is proposed today. Are there any questions on this item?
Are there any questions?
Yeah, yes. And Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir. Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Doc, again, on addressing this. Lots of people in the community, think that front porches are a neat idea and have asked me in the past, why do we just limit that to the RS50 zoning district? Well, I think the fact that we can expand this elsewhere is important. If you could go back a slide or two to the actual text, one more slide back. Okay. Item B, as related to the overlay districts, and Ms. Doc and I spoke about this this morning. I think that we should be doing everything we can to encourage front porches in the overlay districts as well, which include East Tampa, which is a huge amount of land and properties, West Tampa, Seminole Heights. I mean, you've got more probably more than half of the original city in those 3 overlay districts. So Ms. Dock and I agreed that she would take a look at the language in section B to make sure that we're doing everything we can to include and encourage front porches in these overlay districts. Does that work for you, Ms. Dock?
Yes, that does work. I can take a look at that and come back to council with some amended language.
I don't know that you need to come back to council because it sounds like you're on a fast track to take it over to the planning commission. So I'm okay. If you can just address it yourself. If we can come up with any tweaks between now and November when you take it to the planning commission, that'd be great. If anything, go overboard with it, and we can always pull back the reins when it comes back to city council. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Councilman Miranda, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I agree with everything that's been said. However, from this point on and into the future, who knows what somebody else may do to this ordinance? So I wonder if there's any legality to making a statement that these type of porches that we're talking about here can never be enclosed, so that some future council in the future and some others in Variance Review Board or whatever, that these are not even allowed to be filed because this is a special thing that we're doing. And if you, I believe you don't put it in something to that effect in the code, some future council members in 2040 or whatever can change these things and just make that another bedroom. Just like happened with carports.
Mr. Miranda, I think there is a provision in there that speaks to not enclosing it. I don't know how much legal would have to advise us if we could ever preclude some future council from changing it. But LaShawn, I can't see the provision that says it won't be enclosed. That's not on our screen.
It is. Yes, Councilman Miranda, that is correct. We have that included within the code. It's under Section A.
I'm looking at it now.
Under 1A, the porch has to remain open on all sides, except where it is attached to the principal structure. So that's one of the conditions.
All right, but I still have a little hesitancy about somebody may do that and change it, but I'm all right.
Good morning, council. This is Abby Feely. I'm also with LaShawn here. Councilman Miranda, I hear what you're saying, and we could add a further statement to the end of A that does say that porches that are something to this effect, but porches that are implemented under this provision may at no time be enclosed or become living space.
I appreciate it very much.
I think that'd be great. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Dingfelder.
All right, anybody else?
And council, if I may, this is LaShawn Dock, so I want to make sure that I am clear. The language, if there are any changes to this language, I would have to bring it back to council prior to going to the planning commission.
Yeah, and this is Andrea Zellman, Deputy City Attorney. I just want to make clear with regard to the ordinance I presented and what LaShawn is presenting now. Again, today is just a workshop. We have time to, and that was the point of the workshop, is to incorporate your comments, your requests, your questions. So we will have the opportunity to go back and tweak everything we're talking with you about today before it actually comes to you for your approval.
Andrea, the only problem with that is if there's a significant substantial change and the planning commission hasn't seen it and we wait until January to address it, then you're gonna have to send it back to the planning commission, is my understanding. So why not bring it back to us 2 weeks from now with all the changes, and then that way we can just vote on it before the November 9th planning commission meeting.
Are you talking now about the ordinance I presented or the one that LaShawn is talking about now?
Both.
Oh, both. because they're on a different track. The one that I presented, the reason I'm asking, it's not due to the Planning Commission until November 9th. I'm not, what you're proposing is a little unorthodox. We don't usually have council vote on an ordinance, a Chapter 27 ordinance before it goes to the Planning Commission. Again, they look at it, and we did advise the Planning Commission that what we sent earlier was subject to change, subject to input from council and the public at this workshop. So does that address your question?
As long as you guys can figure it out procedurally, that's fine, but I don't want to come into January and then there's changes made and then it has to circle back to the Planning Commission again. I mean,
and maybe I wasn't clear. It would not have to go back to the Planning Commission at that point. It would not. It's your code. You have the option to change it. So that would not be an issue. The purpose of the Planning Commission hearing is for them to look at consistency with the comprehensive plan and to make an advisory recommendation. So you would still have the opportunity to change it.
Okay.
Council, this is Abby Seeley again. I just want to confirm, in an effort to be expeditious and bring you back that language and keep things on track in relation to the averaging that Councilman Dingfelder just brought up. I think in the overlays, East Tampa and West Tampa, we do front yard averaging, and sometimes that average can result in a 10-foot front setback, which then if you allow the 8-foot for the porch, you end up with 2 feet. So what we're trying to do is ensure that that rhythm that the overlays seek to achieve is consistent. And we do have some language that we can propose that the front yard average shall be measured to the front facade of the structure, and that front porches as regulated in 27-159 shall be allowed to encroach up to 8 foot into the established front yard. However, at no time may the front porch be less than 5 feet from the property line, which I think would allow that encroachment, but would also allow us to remain consistent with building code and to try to still maintain that rhythm that the averaging is seeking to ensure.
Welcome back, Ms. Feely, and I like that compromise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, that wraps up that portion. Next up, the next presentation bundle will include items number 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, and then item number 12. Carol Post, if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it, and thank you again for letting us modify that schedule to address these in a more comprehensive manner in a bundled way. We have a number of slides to present, and we actually have a very comprehensive presentation given that we're addressing so many items here. And I will go through those before we kick off into the substance of this. Next slide, please. I would want to recognize that this presentation, the substance of it, and the recommendations represent the input of a number of elements with the city and from the Planning Commission as well. We have the Planning Department, our newly formed Planning Department is the lead for this, but certainly input from our Development and Growth Management team, the Mobility Department, Transportation, our Legal Department, and then our partners at the Planning Commission. David Hay and Yasser Gonzalez are on the line. I don't know if Melissa Zornita is on the line. We've spoken with her in depth as well, but we very much want to reflect that this presentation and all of its associated inputs represent a team. It's a team sport here, and we are looking to move forward very much in alignment across all of these areas. Many of these things are inextricably linked. So next slide, please. I'll just cover, given the density, if you will, of this presentation, I want to just touch upon the motions that will be covered here so that council and also members of the public can be clear where we will be addressing certain motions that are on the agenda. Would like to just talk about our growth management planning principles that are in place now and moving forward. And then Randy Goers of our planning department will walk us through a three-part presentation concluding with next steps and suggestions for consideration. We definitely want to sort of take a look at where we are now relative to population and employment trends, how our planning tools have worked to date, and how we see that working for us moving forward, and then where we plan to take ourselves relative to our strategic and community priorities. So next slide. As the chair referenced, the presentation will specifically address 5 items that are on the agenda relative to, and I won't go through these in detail, but the agenda item number 5, how to plan for areas of growth and protect areas that do not want growth. Agenda item number 10, which has to do with the coastal high hazard areas. Agenda item number 12, which is planning for Davis Islands and West Shore Palms. Agenda item number 9, which is questions about a master plan for East Tampa. And agenda item number 8, having to do with the text amendment cycles relative to Chapter 27-151. Next slide. There's a number of other motions that are not specifically on the agenda, but that will be included in the presentation. Some of these were presented in memorandums or were lightly touched upon through the summer, given some of the council activities, cancellations of meetings and the like. We wanted to make sure that they got a full airing here for public purposes. They're set forth here. The motion that was made late last year around issues concerning south of Gandy area, the feasibility of form-based code and possibility of an overlay district for Davis Islands, questions that had been raised over the summer around the mixed use designation within the comp plan and the LDC, and then a follow-up on the neighborhood commercial district plans that had been motioned some time ago. And next slide. And then finally, we will also give 2 smaller but discrete presentations on 2 agenda items that are listed here. Agenda item number 6, concerning the city's bonus density provisions, and agenda item number 4, which has to do with the 5% dimensional criteria of lot splits, which was just briefly spoken about. All of that will be covered in this presentation and a couple of subsequent ones, and we will try to go through it as rapidly as possible, but comprehensively, as we are covering a lot of ground here. Next slide, please. One of the overarching concepts that we believe are interwoven through all of these motions and many of the concerns we've heard about from the public are we think summarized here. There are questions and concerns around density that is occurring in our neighborhoods, about traffic that comes as a result of increased density, around development that can often appear to be out of scale and character with neighborhoods, even though it may be legal, relative to the question that was just asked. Also, the implications of development in proximity to areas that are susceptible to hurricanes, and how the shelter and hurricane evacuation issues need to be addressed. And then the general sense of how do communities and members of the public relate to and understand the long-term plan for the development of the city of Tampa. So we will try to address those, or at least reflect on our desire to address those over the long term. Some of these are difficult questions. They are not easily answered, but we do have plans for them and ways to address them, as well as suggestions for the council to consider in terms of addressing these things. Next slide. And lastly, before we dig into the presentation, is just to understand our perspective on growth management planning principles. We believe the first and foremost is that there is a reliance on a wide range of stakeholders. First and foremost is our members of the public. I'll speak about that in a moment. But within our municipal organization, legal, infrastructure and mobility, and the transportation, our sustainability and resilience department now, and of course our partners at the Planning Commission, MPO, and others, the county. There are no stakeholders that can be left behind in this conversation. We are a very inclusive organization. Our our approach to these things is to be inclusive and engaging, and we believe that the way that the city of Tampa will successfully move forward is to ensure that we hear all voices and account for all voices in our planning moving forward. As I said, the attention to ensuring that we have collaboration and outreach across our communities is as important and is foremost for us, whether that be the CRAs, the CACs, other community and neighborhood groups, as well as our development community, the planners, the designers, and the investors. These are the elements that drive our economic engine, and all of these voices need to be heard as we plan our long-term strategies. Finally, relative to our plans moving forward, I would like to thank the mayor and leadership of Tampa for making the investment in our new Department of Development and Growth Management. We have changed the name to reflect what we believe is the focus of this area, recognizing the need for development and to ensure that that economic engine continues, but having it be done in a measured and strategic way that ensures protection and respect for our existing communities and unique characteristics of our neighborhoods. We also have our new director on board, Abby Feely. You've already received some of the benefit of her knowledge, experience, and background. We welcome Abby Feely, who's her past 18 years with the city, and now also had the addition of her private sector experience, will be a wonderful asset to help drive our direction for the team moving forward. We also have the addition of our new chief building official, John Hutchinson. I don't know if all of you have had a chance to meet him, but he will also be an integral part of driving our direction on the construction services and development side. And then lastly, as I've spoken before, is the formalizing of our city planning department and that function, which is an integral part of having a strategic planning strategy moving forward, and Randy Goers will be leading that. So with that as the backdrop, I will turn the microphone over to Randy Goers. He will walk us through this presentation. Again, there is a lot to cover here. We do feel like having an opportunity to look at the data and the information that is integral to drive our strategy is an important part before we get into the elements of our plan and conclude with the suggestions and recommendations for consideration. So Randy, you can take it.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, Council. Randy Goers, Director of City Planning. Next slide, please. Before we get into a lot of the details of the question about where growth should be directed, it's important to understand the type of growth that we're expecting on a broader basis. Next slide, which really gets into the question of our population employment projections. The Tampa Comprehensive Plan contains the population employment projections, and that really drives the growth strategy. They're based on the demographic trends and how they may impact the community in the future. Various growth scenarios were developed in the preparation of the projections. These were developed a few years ago as part of the plan update, I believe in 2016, and also for the MPO Long Range Transportation Plan. A preferred scenario was selected, which really is a hybrid of the other scenarios that were developed at the time. Input was received from all 4 local governments as well as the community at large. And then one thing to keep in mind, population projections are a non-adopted planning tool. And when we say in a plan a certain area is projected to grow by a certain amount, that helps us in our planning, development of planning policies, but they aren't adopted numbers that we have to hit or not hit. They help us understand the dynamics of what is the needs for the area. Next slide, please. So starting out, we look at the projection for the countywide population projection. This drives everything in the county for the 4 jurisdictions. And the Bureau of Economic Research for Florida develops the population projections for all counties of the state. They develop 3 ranges of population projections, and then the local governments adopt the population projections that makes the most sense for their particular county. Hillsborough County has traditionally adopted the medium projections. And in this case, it shows that by 2045, the total population for Hillsborough County would be about 2,007,000 people. That's the planning target that we use currently for the 2045 plan. Next slide, please. For the last 10 years, the county has been adding approximately 24,000 people each year. And you can see their average or the yearly rate as well as the average rate. Next slide, please. During that same period, the city of Tampa has been averaging about 6,085,000 people, 6,085 people per year. And it shows, again, that same curve as the county. Next slide, please. This slide and the next slide provide some very interesting information. This is a comparison of the average allowable densities citywide for our plan categories and the actual densities or the average developed density that's occurring. There's some good news and some challenging news in these numbers. First part that is good is that our plan has adequate capacity to handle future growth, our plan categories today. And you can see that we have on the average for residential density, 19 dwelling units per acre. We're averaging about 5.1 dwelling units an acre in actual development. And again, this is citywide. There's going to be some places in the city where the actual development is closer to the future land use categories. But by and large, we have a lot of capacity to handle future growth. Next slide. This is the same analysis, but looking at the FARs for commercial development. And again, it shows that we have a great deal of capacity in our plan categories to accommodate the commercial growth. Where the challenges come in the next slide or some of the implications is, and I mentioned that we have, on the average, we have capacity to deal with future growth. Next slide, please. Here we go. On the average, we have sufficient capacity in our future land use categories to address future growth. But we may need to begin looking at where that is happening, where that capacity exists relative to local communities. It might be the case that some areas that we're hearing that feel that they're being overbuilt, maybe the plan categories have too much capacity in those areas, or maybe we need to develop a new plan category that can be used in the future to help address some of the disparities in growth that might be occurring. So we would be looking at assessing our future plan categories in the future and determine the appropriateness of those plan categories in the location of the city. Next slide, please. This is a good time to talk about the mixed-use plan categories. We were asked to provide a definition from the comp plan. The definition is from the comp plan is a type of development that combines the mix of uses that may include residential, commercial, and or office within one building, or multiple buildings with direct pedestrian access between the uses. So it could be one building that could be vertically mixed, vertically integrated, or several buildings that have provide pedestrian access. This was the motion that was made by Councilman Dingfelder to look at the definition of what the mixed-use category was. The comp plan, there is no specified number or percentage for mixed use. It's typically allowed to or offered up to the market to determine what that percentage would be. And usually takes time, and it's our experience. And this is one of the things that we may want to look at is where it's been working in the city and where it hasn't been working. Because all of us, there are places in Hyde Park, Palma Cia, Ybor City, where we know we can walk, and we know there's single-use buildings that are in close proximity to other uses, and yet that environment is a mixed-use area, and that we all feel that it's the type of environment that we're trying to create, even though those buildings and those parcels are all single-use. There are also places in downtown, the Channel District, and other areas that are starting to develop where there's vertically integrated mixed use that provides the same type of pedestrian environment to occur. So I think there's an opportunity to begin looking at where the mixed use either plan categories are working and how that environment is being created, and then trying to understand where maybe mixed-use categories are being used and that environment is not occurring. So we think there's an opportunity to assess our mixed-use categories as we move on. Next slide, please. Basically, we're growing in residential units. In the last 10 years, there's been a 4% increase in our composition. So in 2010, we were about 30% of multifamily units, and now around 2019, 2020, we're at about 34%. So we are growing more or shifting more to multifamily, and that's a direct result of the fact that we have very little available land left for single-family development. New single-family development is really taking shape in New Tampa, where the land has been available for single-family development in that area. It also, you can see on the chart the growth in housing units from 2010 to 2019. It's been about almost 20,000 housing units during that period of time, or a 13% increase. Next slide, please. Now we get into some of the population estimates by jurisdiction for 2045. And remember I mentioned the two just slightly over 2 million people that is projected for 2045. This is the allocation for the 4 jurisdictions, with Hillsborough County, or the unincorporated Hillsborough County population being targeted at 1.3 million, with an increase of around 350,000 people. City of Tampa is projected to have a total population of about 560,000, with an increase of about 169,000 people. This is, I think, an important slide to keep in mind, because we're hearing from our local communities about the amount of growth that they're seeing in their neighborhood. We're all part of a larger county-wide growth trend, where growth is happening throughout the county and in different areas. Next slide, please. This is the 2045 employment growth by jurisdiction, showing that the Hillsborough County and the City of Tampa will increase in employment. The city's employment it looks like it's going to grow at a higher amount than the county, at about, again, another 169,000 for employees. I'd like for you to keep in mind, or remember those two numbers, 169,000 residents and 169,000 employees, because there's a slide later on where I'm going to want to reference back to that. But generally, you can see that the City of Tampa and Hillsborough County are all scheduled to receive quite a bit of growth between now and 2045. Next slide, please. Even though the City of Tampa is projected to grow to about 560,000 people, our percentage of the countywide population is going to stay the same. In 2010, our population represented about 28% of the overall county population. In 2045, we're still projected to represent about 28% of the overall county population. So even though we are growing, we're growing by a great deal. Percentage-wise from the county, we're basically going to be at the same rate. Next slide, please. The employment comparison that we will shift, we're going to grow in employment, but as a percentage of the countywide employment, our employment is going to go up by about 1%. In 2010, we were 47% of the county's overall employment, and by 2045, we expect to be around 48% of the total employment. Next slide, please. In looking at countywide employment patterns for analysis purposes, the county was divided into 34 planning areas. Next slide. This slide has a lot happening on this slide, but the key takeaways are the areas that are in red, have a red bar underneath, are the city sub areas. And what it shows is that almost every area within the county is expected to grow, except for those areas that didn't have residential development to begin with, like MacDill Air Force Base or the Port of Tampa, and then a few areas which are at total build out in terms of their lots. But it's important to understand, or to see, that we're all going to be growing. Every area of the city and the county is projected to grow. If you look on the right side of the, or the left side of the chart where the star is, that's downtown Tampa. Of all the areas in the city of Tampa, the downtown planning area is projected to receive the most growth in the city. On the right side, you can see the large bar, that's South County. South County is projected to receive the most growth of all areas in the county. Next slide, please. This is the same analysis showing employment, and it clearly shows that downtown Tampa will be the dominant employment growth center of the future. It will surpass the West Shore Business District as the area with the most employment. And between the downtown and West Shore, they become the dominant employment centers in the region. Next slide, please. So where this is starting to bring us, as we start looking at the growth trends for the areas, we start looking at some of the population projections, a pattern starts to emerge in terms of where we would like to see growth. So when you hear areas that are desired for growth or areas where we want to see growth, this is the pattern of development which starts to emerge, and that is the West Shore, downtown, the USF Employment Center, Brandon, and Plant City, where we see the residential and the employment growth targeted in those areas. Note that all areas of the county, except for maybe the outlying rural areas, are expected to grow. All areas of the city are expected to grow. There is no area that we're saying no growth is going to occur. What we're saying is that there are areas of the city where we want to encourage and see more growth happen. Next slide, please. And the reason that we want to see more growth happen in those areas is this slide, because this is where the major transportation improvements are being targeted. All the mass transit discussions of linking the West Shore to downtown, to USF, out to Brandon, and over to Plant City, then on to other areas, is all dependent on achieving the type of density that we want to create or support multimodal improvements. So the pattern of development that we're talking about is designed to support the transportation and multimodal improvements that are being planned, and vice versa. Those improvements are being programmed to be able to serve the development that we hope to achieve. Remember, I asked you to keep in mind 169,000 people and the residents and also the employees. This slide should reflect those two numbers. This slide is 212 and 204 is a mistake. Our basic question as we move forward, and the question that we're hearing from many people in the city of Tampa, really gets down to where are those 169,000 residents going to find themselves, and where will the 169,000 employees be working? And that's the question that we have to work with as we move forward. To give you an idea of what 169,000 residents looks like, if you're looking at about a 2.5 or 2.5 people per household, that's about 60 to 70,000 housing units. And if you have a apartment complex of around 350 people, that's still about 175, 180 apartment buildings at 350 units each. So that's a lot of apartment buildings of that size to figure out where to go. And not everybody wants an apartment building. Some people still want to live in townhomes, high rises. So that's the challenge of where the growth would be situated over the next 20 years, 25 years. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of our tools, how we manage some of this growth and how they work. Next slide. We have basically 4 tools at our disposal. One of them is the comprehensive plan, the future land use map, our urban form tools, and our land development code. Next slide, please.
Aaron, could I stop in 1 second?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Randy, could we go back 2 slides? One more. Okay. That's okay, Randy. These are all good thoughts, but looking at this POD concept, which I think, generally speaking, is a good concept. So, so the dotted lines show where We might have, future rail lines, future bus service, et cetera, et cetera. But then you show growth down there, let's say, for example, in South Tampa, and then even south of Gandy, which is identified as 92, Highway 92, you show a dark purple and even a light purple all across South Tampa, but you don't show any anticipated transportation improvement to speak of. And then up in the northwest quadrant of the city, including West Tampa, to the northwest, again, you're in the same situation. Light purple and dark purple, but no. So I'm just wondering why the inconsistency there. I think that's part of the rebellion that we're justified rebellion that we're starting to feel from people. Related to that. Do you have any comments related to that?
Yeah, just that we'll be able to, I think some of the rest of the report will, or rest of the presentation will address much of that. And at the same time,
last night, and I know what's coming, but I wanted to focus in on this map in particular because it concerns me, and anybody who's looking at it who lives in these areas, might well be concerned.
So it's a good question, Mr. Dingfeller, but as you know, this is, and as you can see, this is a high-level map of the area. The long-range transportation plan for the county specifies all of the specific transportation improvements which are designed to serve this pattern of development. So I would say that many of the questions you asked about specific improvements linking the different areas are outlined in long-range transportation plan as well. Okay, so let me, if I could, let me move on to the next slide, please. I want to get caught up to the Tampa Comprehensive Plan slide. There we go. Okay. All right, so in the Tampa Comprehensive Plan, the tool that we use to help guide the development to where we want to encourage it to go. One of them are the tools of the planning district. The city is divided into 5 major planning districts in the comprehensive plan. The area in the circle is the Central Tampa District, the USF North Tampa District, and the West Shore District. This area also coincides with the areas in purple that were shown on the map on a couple of slides ago. But when we talk about trying to find the areas that we're trying to encourage more development, this is the area that we're talking about, is these targeted districts of the city. This is also the areas that contain the business centers, the CBD, West Shore, and the USF business centers. It's the areas that also include the CRAs, the enterprise zone, the opportunity zones, the urban villages. All of the economic development tools which are designed to encourage development are typically found in this area as well. It's also where the major transportation improvements in terms of rail, the larger investments are initially to serve. We're talking about the downtown, the West Shore, the USF, and also linking it to the other areas. It also includes the TCA strategy, which talked about the primary transit corridors and how the TCA strategy is used to help encourage development in this area and also along the major transportation corridors and the investments that are made there. It also is the area which is typically when we're asked or we're bringing forward code changes where there is an incentive, whether it's a bonus incentive or a parking incentive, a density incentive. Usually it's happening to areas that are in this area. So this is the area where we try to target a variety of different mechanisms to encourage redevelopment, more development, to achieve the pattern that we're trying to achieve. Next slide, please. This slide just gives a snapshot of a planning district. This is the central planning district, and it shows on the map a variety of the tools that I talked about. It has the urban villages. Some of those urban villages are community redevelopment areas in their plans. The transit envelope for light rail is shown in the area. You can see along the major corridors that there's a sort of an orange or a salmon color. Those are our primary transit corridors where we're trying to encourage more development occurring along the routes that are programmed for more transit or additional transit. And so that gives you an idea of what some of the tools in the plan to try to encourage redevelopment or more development in the urban villages. Next slide, please. The future land use map implements the vision of the plan. We all know that. It establishes the range of permitted uses and densities and intensities. It includes the policies and how development should be managed for the future land use categories. And it really is the primary land use or the primary growth management tool that we have. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of the future land use map. Most of us who deal with it on a routine basis are very familiar with it. This is from downtown into Ybor City and then into East Tampa. And what you can see is the darker red land uses were the higher in density, higher intensity land uses, the mixed use. It starts giving way to less intensity and density and less mixed use into more of a single family pattern. Now, if somebody was to ask, what is the plan for my area? The future land use map is the primary mechanism for communicating what a person's property or a neighborhood's future plan is. Next slide, please. But we understand, we recognize that it's not the easiest document to understand unless you read all the other policies and have an awareness on a daily basis of what the future land use map really means. So we're moving forward and looking at how we can bring in some 3D visualization tools to help communicate what the plan really means. Say, the image on the left could be what it looks like from a single family land use next to a multifamily land use. So that residents can have a better idea of the type of density that is planned for the area through the future land use map. The 3D visualization tools are also sophisticated enough to be able to actually show how proposed developments or planned developments would look in the actual environment. So one of our efforts moving forward is to look at these tools and to try to convert our plan into something that is more user-friendly to be able to view. Not only can it be used for future land use or development, but parks can be put on it, planned infrastructure can be added to it. All the things that we talk about in terms of people want to know what is happening in my community can be added in a way that can be easily understood and consumed by the community. Next slide, please. So how, big questions, we have these tools and people want to know, are they working or how are they working? So we did a little bit of analysis, a preliminary analysis. Next slide, please. And we looked at first plan amendments. And what we found when we look back from 2010 is that, and you can see the table shows, there's a series of tables just like this. We combine the 3 planning districts that are in the circle. Those are the areas that we're trying to target. And the other 2 districts, South Tampa and New Tampa, are below that. So in this case, in terms of plan amendments, since 2010, 69% of the plan amendments that have been approved are in the targeted district. So we would look at that as saying that's what we're trying to achieve, is more change and more growth in that area than we would in the other areas. So on one hand, at least on plan amendments, it looks like the plan is guiding development or more development into the area that we're targeting. Next slide, please. When we look at rezonings, we see that it's nearly half of the rezonings are being targeted into those into the targeted districts. I would still say that the plan is working in this respect because what's accounting for the growth in the other districts is really in New Tampa, where there's about 1,900 acres that went through some sort of rezoning in the past 10 years. And looking at it, part of it was some annexations, other parts were some bringing them into compliance with the future land use map, but the future land use map didn't change to create much more intensity and density. So although statistically it looks like 46% is only happening in the targeted area, we think that more of it is actually happening according to the vision than what actually shows up in the numbers. Next slide, please.
Chairman, quick question.
I'm gonna go ahead, sir. But after this, after Mr. Goers finishes the presentation, I'm gonna ask for a 30-minute break. I originally said 12, and then when we come back from that break, we can ask all the questions we want. So, Councilman Dingfelder, go ahead with your question, but moving forward, that's how it'll be. Thank you.
It's so hard with so many slides, and the slides aren't. Anyway, Mr. Gowers, go back one slide, please. Okay. So between this slide and the next slide, you have a circle, and by your what you've told us, you seem to indicate that everything within that circle are areas that we're happy that growth is happening. But that circle encompasses every single part of the city except for south of Euclid and New Tampa. So I think there'd be a lot of people out there who might be concerned that as planners, we're okay with increases, with plan amendments and rezonings all across the core of the city with those two exceptions. Is that what the circle means?
No, and I didn't say that it was an area that where everybody was going to be happy with it. In the rest of my presentation, we actually touch on that.
All right, well, tell me what the circle means.
Circle is the 3 planning districts, which we've identified as the area that we're trying to encourage a greater proportion of development than in the other areas. The 169,000 people and 169,000 employees are going to go somewhere. And what we're saying and what the plan is saying is that this is the area, these areas is where we want to encourage the higher proportion of that development. And I think that's in what we're hearing from most of the community is that they would like to see a higher proportion of development happening in the corridors of West Shore, downtown, and USF. But the rest of my presentation will deal with those specific items.
My point is your circle is all encompassing. If your circle had very narrow bands and narrow corridors, as opposed to an entire circle that represents at least 50% of the landmass of the city, I think people might be happy.
And the rest of my presentation will actually touch upon that, and I think you'll be okay with that. Okay, moving forward to, let's see, we're at the, we did non-residential permits. Okay, so we did the same thing with non-residential permits, looking at the pattern, non-residential permits, and again, 78% of the non-residential construction is happening in those 3 districts. Next slide, please. When we get to residential permits, the pattern seems to diverge a little bit. We have 51% that are happening in the 3 districts. This shows the residential permits by neighborhood. And the part that is really, that sort of stands out as an aberration is the part that is happening in south of Gandy, where much more residential development has taken place than what I think most people would have thought from the discussion of it on how the plan is trying to guide development. So there is an area in south of Gandy which I think we need to take a look at in terms of the type or the amount of development, residential development that has occurred in that area. Next slide, please. Now, there is one part that we have to address as we move forward. It doesn't explain everything that's happening in south of Gandy, but it does explain some of the things that are happening or that have happened in south of Gandy. In 2007, there was a Gandy area transportation study. And in that study, it found at that time, 2007, there were already 317 acres that were currently or tentatively approved for development and infill redevelopment in the study area. And it was anticipated that those projects would include approximately 4,900 multifamily units, 500 single-family units, and 260,000 square feet of non-residential space. This is, again, back at 2007, the amount of development that was already approved or tentatively approved that was going through a process. Now, if you remember 2008, 2009, the Great Recession started to hit. There were two or three big DRIs in that area that went on hold, and many of them had to be reprogrammed. So a lot of the development that was already approved or planned sort of was on a holding pattern. And then around 2016, things started to move forward. Some of that development started to move forward. Others have been some new development that have been created either through rezonings or a plan amendment. But a significant amount of development that has occurred there was a development that was planned as far back as 2007. That same study recommended two major transportation improvements designed to address that planned development. One of them was the Selman connector, which is under construction and will be finished. I think it's sometime next year that it might be finished. But right now that area is experiencing congestion because of two different factors, and the two different but related. First is the traffic that is still coming across Gandy at grade and creating the congestion because they're just driving through the area. The other is the construction itself, which is creating additional congestion in the area as some of the as people have to navigate all the MOTs that are happening. Once that facility opens, there will be a marked improvement in terms of the traffic on Gandy and the Gandy West Shore intersection, as all of the traffic that is coming across the Gandy highway will bypass that whole district altogether. The other planned improvement is an improvement I think will start construction probably after the first year, and that's the Tyson Street connector, which is going to connect Tyson Street from West Shore to Manhattan and provide another east-west route for people that are coming north on West Shore. It'll help to alleviate, again, some of that congestion. Again, these are two transportation improvements that were planned in response to the growth that was happening several years ago, but it's for various reasons, and funding primarily. It's taking time for those improvements to finally be constructed, and it's happening now. And then, of course, to deal with the questions and the issues of flooding and stormwater, the city has the pipes project and then the stormwater improvement projects, which will help service throughout the city, but it definitely will help the concerns of service here in the south of Gandy area. Next slide, please. Okay, the Land Development Code is the fourth tool that we use. We're given sort of a refresh or a briefing on the code amendments. Our code amendments are typically done twice a year. I think there's been discussion about maybe letting them occur at different times of the year or whenever they're processed. But when bundling them at twice a year allows a lot of economies of scale in terms of publishing, in terms of getting everybody on the same page in terms of what's in the code. And it also gets back to that predictability to people who want to know what the changes are, because now they know that twice a year, all the changes are going to be summarized. They'll be able to review them. They don't have to keep looking or keep attending meetings nonstop. They can plan around the code amendments. Next slide. So here's some of the conclusions that we're finding when we look at our growth management tools. That generally, growth is being directed into the areas targeted for growth in the comp plan. Now, some communities are experiencing infill and redevelopment, either a rate or a type that is where they feel is not consistent and for what they would like to achieve. Residents are concerned about the amount and type of development that are occurring in their communities. This gets back to the comment that you raised earlier, Councilman Dinkfelder. There are some past development decisions that add to the challenge of managing growth because we do have to take that into account. And then our plan amendments address the community needs. And that's how we can address some of these and fine tune some of these community needs is through our land development code amendments. Next slide.
Chair, this is Carol Post, Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. I recognize the time frame that we've hit. Obviously, we're trying to cover a lot of material here. If it's the pleasure of the Chair and Council, we're happy to take a break at this transition point. I'll defer to you.
All right, let's do that. I don't want to go through everything and then, you know, keep it choppy and then we come back for questions so we don't lose focus. But if we could take a 30-minute lunch break. It's 12:34. We can get back on here at 1:05. Again, do not sign out of the meeting. Just mute yourselves, or do what you do, but do not sign out of the meeting. And then we'll take roll and reconvene from this break at 1:05 p.m.
Thank you.
All right, we are now in recess until 1:05 p.m. and then we'll take roll then, and that's it. Thank you very much, and we'll continue on with the presentation. So we're on break until 1:05.